They say nothing ever happens on a night shift. Whoever said that never worked alone at a gas station planted in the middle of nowhere, miles from the nearest town, with nothing but fog and trees for company. There's something about 2 a.m. that makes the world feel thin, like the dark is listening. I'm John Rourke, and I run the graveyard shift at Red Pine Gas off Highway 66. One pump always leaks a little. The icebox hums like it's alive. And the forest behind the station? It's too quiet. No birds. No bugs. Just trees standing like they're waiting for something. I like the quiet. Mostly. The clock on the wall read 1:42 a.m. I sat behind a counter with my boots propped up and a lukewarm cup of coffee in hand, watching the security feed flicker on the old monitor. Nothing but an empty lot soaked in silver moonlight, the pumps standing like rusted sentries. Same as every other night. I flipped through the register receipts just to keep myself awake. A couple of pickups rolled through earlier, locals heading back from God knows what. One lady came in for smokes and left her engine running the whole time. I told her not to. The woods don't like that sort of thing. Didn't mean to say that out loud. Just slipped out. She laughed. I didn't. You pick up strange habits working out here. The wind howled against the glass, making the whole station creak. It's an old building, built sometime in the 60s, patched together ever since. The roof leaks when it rains, the floorboards groan like they've got secrets, and the smell of gasoline never really goes away, no matter how much bleach you use. Still, I like it. There's a rhythm to the nights here. You stock the shelves. You check the pumps. You clean up spilled coffee and ring up junk food for truckers who barely make eye contact. Rinse and repeat. Except that night, something fell off. It started with a low hum. Not from the coolers or the lights, but from the ground. Deep. Faint. Like the world itself was breathing slow under my boots. I stood up, walked around the counter, and stepped outside. The cold slapped me awake. Fog rolled over the lot in thick waves, crawling low across the cracked asphalt. The forest loomed beyond, just a black wall of pine and silence. Nothing. No cars. No people. No movement. But the pump closest to the woods, the farthest one from a building, clicked. That familiar metal clunk, the one it makes when someone lifts the nozzle. Only, there was no one there. I squinted into the fog. Maybe a prank. Maybe the wind. I stepped closer, slowly, like the air had teeth. The pump handle was out, hanging there, gently swinging, like someone had just let it go. I stared at it, then checked the digital readout. $14.62. Exactly 5.1 gallons dispensed. That's when I noticed the hose. It wasn't wet. No fresh fuel smell. The pump hadn't dripped. I glanced back at the building, suddenly aware of how far I'd walked from the light. My breath hung in the air. The forest felt too close. I returned the nozzle to its cradle. It clicked into place, solid and final. Then I walked back inside, locked the door, and told myself it was a glitch. A fluke. Nothing worth remembering. But when I sat back at the register and looked at the log, the sale was there. Time stamped. 2:04 a.m. No license plate. No security footage. Just fuel gone and a receipt printed for no one. Just another night, I told myself. But I didn't finish my coffee. And I didn't take my boots off. And for the first time since I started working here, I didn't feel alone. Not at all. It was just after 3 a.m. when I noticed it. The register made a soft ding, the same sound it always makes when a pump finishes a transaction. I was in the back, counting cigarette cartons and trying not to nod off. The hum of the cooler and the flickering buzz from the overhead light were the only sounds keeping me company. I glanced over at the monitor on the counter. Pump 4, $30, unleaded. That was strange. No one had come in. I've been watching the front since midnight, and the lot was dead. Not even a passing car, let alone a customer. I checked the window. The night outside was still empty. Pale blue lights buzzed over the pumps. No vehicles. No footsteps. Nothing but cold air and that dense black tree line across the road. I stepped outside. The autumn wind cut through my jacket. I looked around, my boots crunching on the gravel. The pump handle was back in its holster, like someone had just used it. The display read $30 paid. I stood there, staring at it. My breath fogged up in the cold. I waited. 10 seconds. 30. A full minute. Silence. I walked back inside and checked the register. The transaction was there, clear as day. Time stamped at 2:04 a.m. No credit card info, cash. The kind of thing you only see when someone pays inside, except no one had. No car. No footsteps. No door chime. It didn't make sense. I pulled up the CCTV feed for Pump 4 and rewound the footage. The video was grainy, as always, but the pumps were visible, barely. I scrubbed back to 2 o'clock. Empty lot. The lights flickered once. At 2:03, the feed glitched. The screen went black. It stayed black for 4 full minutes. When it came back, the pump handle was in place, and the lot was still empty. I leaned back in my chair, heart starting to beat a little faster. Maybe the camera glitched. Maybe the register glitched too. Maybe the cold and the quiet were finally starting to get to me. I stood up, walked back outside again, and crouched beside the pump. I touched the nozzle. It was warm. The metal was warm, like it had just been used. My skin crawled. I went back in, locked the door, and sat behind the counter with the lights turned low. I told myself there was an explanation. A prank, maybe. A kid from town screwing with me. But the tank logs didn't lie. That gas was gone. Someone had bought it. Something had taken it. And I hadn't seen a damn thing. That was the first time. The first night, I felt like something invisible was walking right beside me, breathing in the same cold air, watching me, waiting. The clock ticked over to 4 a.m., and I realized I hadn't blinked in 5 full minutes. I didn't go outside again that night. The first time, I figured it was just some glitch. A weird timestamp, a bad camera feed, maybe a prank from the day crew. It was easier to believe that than the alternative, that someone had pumped 10 gallons of fuel into thin air at 2 in the morning. But when it happened again the next night, well, that's when the unease set in. I was halfway through my second cup of coffee, flipping through an old trucker magazine someone had left behind, when the beep from the register snapped me out of the silence. That slow, high-pitched beep that means a pump's been activated. I looked up at the screen. Pump 3. Customer on 3. I muttered, more out of habit than anything else. I stepped out from behind the counter and walked to the glass front door. Cold air clung to the outside. The world beyond the lights was pitch black, like the station was floating in some void. No headlights, no engine sounds, just the faint humming of the overhead lamps and the quiet creak of the cooler behind me. No car. I stepped outside. The night wrapped around me like wet wool, heavy and suffocating. Pump 3 was standing there, exactly like it had the night before. The nozzle was still clipped in. The little digital screen read $0. And then, right in front of me, it blinked. $34.62. I didn't see it happen. I didn't blink. But somehow the fuel had been pumped, and the amount was now locked in. I walked slowly over to the pump, reached out, and touched the nozzle. It was warm. Too warm. Like someone had just used it. I turned in a slow circle, scanning the empty lot. My breath fogged up in front of me. There were no footprints. No tire marks. The gravel was untouched. The woods beyond the lot loomed, tall and shadow-thick. I stared into them for a long minute. The pine trees shifted gently in the breeze, like they were whispering to each other. That creeping itch crawled up my spine. I didn't like it. Back inside, I replayed the security footage. Nothing. At exactly 2:04 a.m., the screen went black again, just like the night before. This time, I watched more carefully. The footage ran smoothly up until the moment. At 2 hours, 3 minutes, and 58 seconds, Pump 3 was empty. The lot was still. Then, just as it ticked over to 2:04, the video glitched. A flash of static. 1 frame. Maybe 2. In those frames, I swear I saw something. A shape. A blur. Too tall to be human, too still to be wind. It stood just to the left of the pump. No face. No details. Just presence. Then the screen went black again. And when it came back on, the pump was full, and the lot was empty again. I stared at the monitor, still frozen on that last frame, until the screensaver kicked in and the feed vanished behind a floating logo. I didn't move for a long time. Eventually, I made another cup of coffee and sat behind the counter with the lights dimmed low. I watched the pumps through the window. Nothing else happened, but I knew something had been there. I just didn't know what. Not yet. The chime over the door rang like it always did, flat, tired, half-hearted. I didn't even look up right away. I was behind the counter, pretending to read the same week-old newspaper I'd already gone through twice. Nights like this move slow, like syrup in winter. But then I felt it. You ever get that crawling itch along the back of your neck, like someone staring at you too hard? That cold weight in the air, even when it isn't cold. That's what crept in with the stranger. I looked up, and there he was. He wore a thick canvas jacket, the kind truckers use to block out road wind, and dusty jeans tucked in old boots. Nothing unusual, but his skin, too pale, like wax. Not sickly, not bruised, just smooth and almost polished. But it was his eyes that really stuck, gray. Not dull gray, shiny sharp, like metal under moonlight. I locked eyes with him, and something inside me flinched. "Evening," I said. He tilted his head, like the word didn't register right away. Then he smiled, slow and wide. Too wide. "Good evening, John." My stomach tightened. My name tag wasn't on. I'd left it in the drawer again after breaking the pin last week. I tried to play it cool. "Have we met?" "No," he said, walking up to the counter. Not in the usual way. There was no accent, no warmth. His voice was smooth, but it felt thin, like someone whispering through a crack in the wall. He picked up a cup and filled it with the burnt coffee that had been sitting on the warmer since 9 p.m. Didn't add sugar. Didn't stir. Just stood there, sipping it while looking straight at me. The silence stretched. "You new in town?" I asked. "I pass through. Often." I frowned. "Don't think I've seen you before." "I'm easy to overlook," he said, still smiling. "Unless I want to be seen." Now, I met weird folks on this highway. Drifters, tweakers, lost hikers, even a guy who swore he was being followed by his own shadow. But this was different. The weird here didn't come from what he said. It came from what he didn't. The way he filled space. Like he didn't quite fit inside his own skin. "You here for fuel?" I asked, maybe a little too hopeful. I wanted a reason to send him out to the pump, just to break the vibe. He chuckled, low, almost amused. No car." That was when something clicked in my head. The fuel logs. The missing gas. The dead air on the tapes. He took another sip of the coffee, then set the cup down, gently, like it was made of glass. "You've been noticing things," he said. I didn't answer. "You're watching the pump now. Counting seconds. Checking records. Listening harder when it gets quiet." Still, I said nothing. But my heart started thudding harder. "That's good," he whispered. "It means you're paying attention." I forced a laugh dry in my throat. Paying attention to what? Ghost pumps. He didn't laugh. Just stared at me with those eyes. Gray like fog. Like steel. Like something buried a long time ago. "Everything hungers, John," he said softly. "Even the dark." The bell above the door rang again. I blinked. He was gone. No footsteps. No door swing. Just gone. The air felt heavier, like it had sucked itself inward where he'd been standing. I stepped around the counter, walked to the window, looked out. Nothing but mist over the road and the glow of Pump 3's flickering light. When I turned back, I saw something on the counter. I hadn't heard him drop it. A coin. Old. Silver. No markings on either side. Cold as ice when I picked it up, even though the station was warm. I pocketed it without thinking. Later, when I tried to find it again, it wouldn't be there. But that was later. That night, I stood behind the counter for hours, staring at the pump that no one ever used, waiting for a car that never came, and wondering why it suddenly felt like it wanted to be used again. I didn't sleep after that second night. Something about the way the numbers lined up on the register, exact same time, exact same amount, down to the cent, made my skin crawl. I told myself it was a glitch, maybe some freak signal triggering an old preset in the system. Maybe the computer was on the fritz. But when I walked out to the pumps, flashlight in hand, and ran a check on the underground tanks, my stomach dropped. The fuel was actually gone. Not just on paper, physically gone. I'd measured it 3 times. Same result. A little over 3 gallons missing from pump 3, just like the register said. And yet, no car had pulled up. No footsteps in the dirt. No tire marks. No damn customer. I sat in the back office with the CCTV monitor and rewound the footage again, fingers numb on the controls. The timestamp ticked closer to 2:03 a.m. I leaned in, the screen flickering with static like it always did at night. And then it happened again. Just as the clock flipped to 2:03, the image cut out. Black screen. No feed. Then it came back on at 2:07 a.m. like nothing happened. I fast-forwarded, reversed, even tried pulling the hard drive out to check on another machine. Same blackout. Same 4-minute hole in time. That was when I knew this wasn't a tech problem. There was something happening here. Something real. Something nobody wanted to talk about. The next day, While the sun was up and the gas station had a rare customer or two, I told my boss what was going on. Calvin's an old guy who owns the place. Used to be a logger, now mostly just sits at home and calls in once a week to ask if we're still open. I caught him on the phone between hunting shows. Hey, Calvin, you ever seen any weird readings on the fuel logs? Silence for a beat. What do you mean weird? He said, his voice like gravel soaked in whiskey. Pump 3. Shows fuel being sold, but no car ever pulls in. Same time every night. Fuel's actually disappearing. Light gone. Calvin let out a slow breath. Old station, son. Built in the 60s. Systems are junk. Probably just condensation in the tanks or a bad sensor. Condensation doesn't log transactions with timestamps and receipts, I said. Another pause. Then, I wouldn't poke around too much if I were you. Click. He hung up. That silence after he spoke, that slow, deliberate don't ask questions tone, told me more than anything else. He knew something. So I went looking. It started with the blueprints. I found them in a dust-choked filing cabinet in the back office, buried under ancient inspection forms and a half-melted calculator. They were yellowed, curled at the edges, labeled Property Plans, Dunlow Service Station, 1963. I spread them out on the counter under the buzzing fluorescent lights. The station layout was mostly the same. Main building, storage shed, 3 working pumps out front. But then I noticed something odd. Toward the northern edge of the blueprint, right up against the tree line, there was a 4th pump marked, Pump 0. I blinked. There were only 3 pumps on the lot. Always had been. I checked again. Pump 0. It wasn't even shaped like the others. The symbol used to draw it looked more like a hatch or trapdoor. There was no fuel line connecting it to the tanks. No wires. No explanation. And the weirdest part? In the margin, someone had scribbled in faded ink. Do not reopen. Sealed under Project Ma, 1971. I leaned back in my chair, heart thudding against my ribs. Project Ma. I whispered to no one. It sounded like something out of a bad sci-fi movie. Government code names. Secret projects. But it was here, printed clear as day, written by hand on the original plans. There was something buried out there. Something old. I decided I'd check the tree line that night. Maybe it was just an old pump they tore out and forgot to update on the blueprints. Maybe the forest had swallowed it up over the years. But a part of me already knew that wasn't true. Because when I shut the filing cabinet and turned off the light, I saw something that hadn't been there before. On the security monitor, frozen at 2:04 a.m., the static image held steady for just a moment. A tall, dark figure stood between pump 2 and 3. No car, no face, just standing, watching, and then the screen went black again. I didn't even blink. I watched the clock above the register tick down like it was counting the last seconds of my life. 2:02 a.m. The gas station was quieter than usual. No crickets outside. No hum from the coolers in the back. Just the buzz of that flickering neon sign over pump 4 and the deep silence pressing in from the woods. I stood behind the counter, hand resting on the shotgun I wasn't supposed to have. It wasn't loaded. I just needed to feel like I had something that could protect me. I'd set everything up hours earlier. Propped the door open. A fresh security camera pointed right at the lot. Lights on full blast. I even chalked a line across the pavement where the shadow had flickered on the tape the other night. 2:03 a.m. My stomach flipped. The air changed. Like the pressure dropped all at once. My ears popped. A breeze blew through the open door, cold and damp, carrying the scent of rust and pine, and something sweet and rotten all at once. And then everything died. Lights blinked once then off. Coolers shut down. The camera's red light vanished. And the clock froze on 2:03. I was alone in the dark. I stepped out from behind the counter, flashlight in hand, but it sputtered as soon as I clicked it on. Just a faint beam, barely enough to see the edge of the register. I moved toward the door, heart thudding like a hammer in my chest. The gravel outside crunched under my boots. I didn't remember walking. My legs just carried me. I stood in the center of the lot, breathing shallow, flashlight held out in front of me like it could scare something off. Everything was covered in that strange fog again, thicker than before, like it wanted to hide something, or someone. And that's when I heard it. A soft slosh. Not footsteps. Not tires. Not an engine. A liquid sound. Slow and steady. Like something pouring. I turned the flashlight toward the pumps. Pump 6. Its screen was lit up, glowing green in the fog. Numbers rolling. Fuel pumping. No car. No customer. Just the nozzle lifted, hanging in midair like an invisible hand held it. Fuel dripped from the edge, pooling on the pavement beneath it. I took a step closer, the air growing colder with every inch. My breath came out in thick clouds. My skin crawled. Then I heard whispering. Low, right in my ear. I spun around. Nothing. Again, whispering from behind me. I turned. Nothing. It was like something circled me, just beyond the fog, never letting me catch it. Never close, but always there. The pump beeped. Transaction complete. The screen blinked and went dark. The nozzle dropped, hitting the ground with a dull clack. And then, silence. All at once, the lights came back on. The coolers hummed to life. The sign buzzed overhead. The camera's red light blinked. And the clock ticked over to 2:04. I stood there, heart racing, hands shaking. I walked slowly to the pump and picked up the receipt sticking from the slot. Blank. Not even a timestamp. Just white paper. I walked back inside and locked the door behind me, even though I knew damn well it wouldn't matter if whatever was out there really wanted in. I replayed the security footage. Black screen. A clean cut from 2 hours, 2 minutes and 58 seconds to 2 hours and 4 minutes. No sound. No picture. Just a digital shrug. I sat down at the counter and looked at the shotgun again. Then at the pump. Then at the woods. And I realized something I hadn't let myself believe until now. This wasn't just some glitch. Something out there was using that fuel. Something I couldn't see. And whatever it was, it came every night. Right on time. 2:03 a.m. I hadn't meant to dig into the attic that night. There wasn't a good reason, really. The station was quiet, and I had a bit of time to kill before the next round of strange fuel purchases. But something felt off. Like there was a corner of the station I never bothered to look into. Something that was waiting for me to find it. I grabbed the ladder, one of the rickety old ones that had always wobbled a bit at the top. I could smell the dust in the air as I hauled myself up, the narrow beam of my flashlight slicing through the dimness of the attic. The walls up here were lined with old storage boxes, the kind you toss things in and forget about. Receipts, newspapers, outdated oil filters, the usual junk you accumulate when you've been around as long as this place has. The attic was a kind of graveyard for the station's past. I moved boxes around, just looking for anything useful. Maybe an old manual for the pumps, or something that could explain the weird fuel readings. But as I shoved a cardboard box to the side, something caught my eye. A file, thick and heavy, wedged between two rotting wooden beams. It wasn't like the others. The file had a leather cover, cracked with age, and the label on the spine was faded, but I could just make out the word project. Beneath that, scrawled in a hurried hand, was a name, Silva. My hands froze for a second. It wasn't the name that rattled me. It was the fact that I knew it. Knew in the same way you know the shape of a word on the tip of your tongue, but can't quite place it. Silva. I heard it somewhere before, maybe even from her, or whatever Silva really was. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears as I opened the file. Inside, the pages were yellowed and brittle, but the ink was still legible. The first few sheets were reports, all technical mumbo-jumbo I couldn't understand. Something about fuel distribution and abnormal pressure readings in the tank system. But then I flipped to a set of newspaper clippings, yellowed and curling at the edges, headlines screaming out about incidents I couldn't recall. The first article read, "Local gas station burns down, no bodies found." I scanned the text, trying to make sense of it. The story was about an explosion at the station back in the 1970s. It described how the fire had started in the early morning hours. Odd thing was, no one could find any bodies in the wreckage. It wasn't just the gas station that burned down. There were several homes in the area that went up in flames too. But no one could explain why there weren't any victims. The fire department was baffled. The second clipping was about a missing persons case, dated just a few years before I'd started working here. Another disappearance near Highway 66. A young woman named Ellie Monroe, just 23 years old, had vanished from the area without a trace. She'd last been seen filling up her car at the station, just a few feet from where I was now standing. But the bizarre part was that no one remembered seeing her leave. She'd paid in cash, and the receipt was still on file, but there was no record of her ever having been in the car at all. No car at all, just like the fuel purchases. I flicked through a few more pages, but my hands were starting to shake. The next clipping was the most recent, dated only a year ago. Mysterious government facility linked to disappearances. This article was different, a lot more cryptic. It mentioned a government facility that had been operating in secret in the area for years, a Cold War-era project that had somehow been linked to disappearances. The facility itself had been abandoned after rumors of strange experiments involving memory manipulation and energy transference. They'd never officially declassified the files, but the report hinted at something much bigger than anyone realized. I flipped through the rest of the file, my eyes racing down the pages. But there was something that stuck with me more than anything else. At the back of the folder was a handwritten note. The handwriting was smudged, as though someone had written it in a hurry. It read, "The maw is waking. The seal is weakening. You must feed it, or it will consume us all." I swallowed hard. The ink on that page was still wet, as though whoever had written it had just finished. The same word kept echoing in my mind. The maw. I was beginning to understand. All the strange fuel purchases, the missing people, the cryptic warnings from Silva, they were all part of something bigger, something old, something that wasn't just feeding on fuel but on memories, on time itself. As I closed the file, I heard something, a faint noise, almost like footsteps from below. I couldn't place it. It sounded like someone walking across the wooden floor of the gas station, but there was no reason anyone should be down there at this hour. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I didn't want to go down there, but something told me I had no choice. I shoved the file under my arm, grabbed the ladder, and clambered down quickly, hoping the noise would stop, hoping I wasn't about to find something worse than the truth. But as I reached the bottom, I felt it. The air had changed again. A heaviness I couldn't explain, the kind that pressed down on you like a weight on your chest. It was like the station itself was holding its breath. And then I saw it. Something in the corner of the room, hidden in the shadows just beyond the reach of the dim light from the old bulbs. A figure, still quiet, waiting. I didn't have to ask who it was. I already knew. It was Silva. It was well past midnight when I decided to follow the tracks. At first, I told myself it was just a way to pass the time, a stupid curiosity I could shake off in the morning. But as the hours ticked on, something gnawed at me, something I couldn't explain. It was as though I could feel the weight of the woods pressing in, waiting for me to step outside, to search. I didn't even need to get in the car. The tracks were clear, still fresh on the ground behind the gas station. Tire marks that cut into the damp earth, winding away into the woods like an invitation. The air had thickened, the temperature dropping by degrees, until even my breath came out in jagged bursts, clouding in front of me like smoke. I grabbed the flashlight. It felt heavier than usual in my hand. I don't know why I thought it would help. I've been carrying it for months now, but tonight it felt like a stranger, like it didn't belong to me. Still, I clicked it on and stepped out into the cold. The woods were silent. Too silent. No rustling of animals. No wind to stir the branches. The kind of quiet that presses on you. Thick and suffocating, like a secret waiting to be spilled. I followed the tracks. They were easy to trace at first, but soon the trees closed in around me, and the path became harder to see. The further I went, the darker it got, the black of the woods swallowing up every sliver of light the flashlight could throw. The beam cut through the darkness in jagged lines, illuminating trunks, roots, and the occasional patch of ground that seemed too still, too perfect. Something wasn't right. I felt it more than I saw it. A creeping sensation like I was being watched. It wasn't the usual feeling you get when you're alone in the woods. It was something colder, something older. A presence that wasn't just observing, but waiting. The tracks led me deeper, and that's when I saw it. A door. It was buried beneath twisted roots, half hidden by the underbrush. Rusted iron, a faded green that barely held on. A door that didn't belong. Not here, not in the woods, not in this part of the world. The markings were the first thing that struck me. Symbols scratched into the metal, some of them jagged, others smooth like they had been carved by hands that knew exactly where to place their fingers. It wasn't just graffiti. It was deliberate, intentional. I approached it slowly, my heartbeat quickening with each step. There was something pulling me forward, something inside me that couldn't stop. I reached out to touch the door, my hand hovering over the cold metal. The air seemed to thrum with a low hum, a vibration that made my teeth ache. I don't know why I didn't turn back then. Maybe it was the same reason I hadn't walked away from the strange fuel purchases, from the strange person who was Silva. There's a part of you, in the face of something like this, that just needs to know. You can't leave without answers. I bent down, clearing away the vines and leaves that covered the edges. The door wasn't just locked, it was sealed shut. But something inside me, something deeper, told me this wasn't just a door. This was something meant to stay buried. I wasn't alone. I froze. The sound came first, the rustling of branches, followed by a soft step in the dry leaves. Then, a figure emerged from shadows. It was Silva. I hadn't heard them approach. They never made a sound, but there they were, standing at the edge of the trees, watching me. "How far are you willing to go, John?" Silva's voice was a whisper that seemed to echo, like it came from all directions. There was no wind, no breeze, but the trees swayed, just a little, as if something unseen was tugging at them. I didn't answer right away. My throat was dry, my mind racing. The flashlight flickered, casting strange, shifting shadows across Silva's face. Their features were sharp, almost too perfect, like something carved from marble. But their eyes, those eyes, held something far older than flesh. "You've come far," Silva continued, stepping closer, almost gliding through the shadows. "But the truth is harder to swallow than you think." "What is this?" I demanded, gesturing toward the door, my voice rough, uncertain. "What are you doing out here? Why is this place, this station, all of it?" Silva smiled, and it wasn't a comforting smile. It was the kind of smile you give when you know something the other person doesn't, something they'll never be able to unsee once it's been shown to them. "You're standing on top of it," Silva said softly. "You were always meant to. This station, these woods, they're the boundary. But boundaries don't last forever, John. And nothing stays locked away forever." I stepped back, my hand tightening around the flashlight. I knew that feeling now, the one that gnawed at the edges of my thoughts, the one that had kept me up at night, trying to make sense of the missing fuel and the strange hours. The one that told me I was part of something I couldn't understand, something that had been waiting far too long. Silva's voice dropped to a whisper, just loud enough for me to hear. "It's time to choose, John. You either walk away, or you open the door." I looked at the door, my heart pounding. The vibrations were stronger now, pulsing in the air, vibrating through my feet. I could almost feel the thing underneath, the presence, the hunger. I swallowed hard, and for a long moment, I was still. There was only the sound of my breath, the hum of the woods, and Silva's patient stare. And then, as if some invisible force had made the decision for me, I reached out and touched the door. It was colder than I expected, cold enough that my fingers went numb. The symbols beneath my fingertips seemed to shift, like they were alive, stretching under my touch. And then, just before I could pull away, I heard something. A voice. Not Silva's, not anyone's. A voice from deep below. And it said, "Let me out." The air felt different that night, thick with a kind of electric tension. I couldn't explain it, but I knew something was about to happen. The gas station seemed more alive, in a way that wasn't right. I stood at the counter, staring at the clock. 2:03 a.m. It was like a switch flipped, and I was wide awake. But it wasn't just me. The whole place seemed to hold its breath, as if the building itself was waiting. I stepped outside. The wind had picked up, swirling the dust around the cracked concrete. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. A low hum came from the woods, like a distant engine running, but there was no car in sight. I wasn't sure why I was heading into the trees, but something was pulling me, like an invisible hand at the back of my neck. It was dark, the kind of dark that felt thick, like the air was solid enough to touch. My flashlight flickered as I walked deeper into the woods, pushing through branches that seemed to reach for me. There was no sound, no night creatures, no rustling, just the eerie hum that was growing louder. Then I saw it. The bunker. It wasn't on any map. I'd never seen it before, and I'd been working here long enough to know the land pretty well. It stood half buried in the earth, chains hanging loosely from its rusted door. There were markings on it, symbols carved deep into the steel. They weren't random. I felt that instantly. They meant something. I got closer, my breath sharp in my chest. My hand shook as I reached out to touch the cold metal, but the moment I did, I froze. The hum from the woods stopped. The silence was almost suffocating. And then a voice. "John." I jerked my head around. Silva. They were standing right behind me, not a sound to give them away. The coldness in their eyes wasn't human. Not anymore. I could feel it in my gut, that they weren't who they said they were. Silva wasn't just a strange traveler. Silva was part of this place, this ritual, this thing I couldn't yet understand. You came looking, they said, their voice smooth, calm. You always do, don't you? You think you're strong enough to look into the dark and not be consumed. I wanted to back away, run, but my feet were stuck in place, my heart thudding in my ears. Silva stepped closer, their voice dropping to a whisper. You don't understand, John. You never will. Not until it's too late. The station, the fuel, it's all part of the ritual. A ritual that's been going on for years. That's why you're here. I shook my head, a lump forming in my throat. What are you talking about? What ritual? Silva didn't answer right away. They just stood there, their pale eyes glowing faintly in the dark. For a moment, I felt a cold wind sweep through the forest, but it wasn't the usual wind. It was like something had opened up, something deep beneath the ground. I could feel it, a pressure pushing against my chest. Silva smiled. It's been feeding, John. The thing beneath the earth. The maw. You've been feeding it, too. You think the fuel is just fuel, don't you? You think it's just gas that powers cars, that makes the lights shine? But no. The fuel, it's something else. The creature beneath needs it to stay alive. It needs your attention, your belief. My stomach dropped. I wanted to scream, to ask questions, to make sense of everything that was spinning inside my head, but nothing was making sense anymore. It felt like reality itself was bending around Silva's words. You've been chosen, John, Silva said, their voice low, almost affectionate. You've been a part of this for longer than you know. Every time you fill a tank, every time you punch in a transaction, every time you look at the pumps, you're feeding it. You're waking it up, little by little. It remembers you now. It knows you. I swallow, my throat dry. The air was thick with something that tasted wrong. The hum had returned, but it wasn't coming from the woods anymore. It was coming from beneath my feet, from the earth. The ground trembled ever so slightly, like the thing beneath was stretching out, waking up. What are you talking about? I asked again, my voice shaky. It's time, John, Silva whispered. You're part of the ritual now. It won't stop. Not until the seal is broken. Not until you do what you're meant to do. I took a step back, my mind racing. The trees around us seemed to close in, the darkness pressing tighter. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Just you, Silva said. You've always been the key. Now you understand. You've been walking the line, and now you'll cross it. Suddenly, the chains on the bunker door rattled. I jumped back, but Silva stayed perfectly still, watching me with that strange, knowing smile. The ritual is already in motion. There's no turning back. You'll open the door, John. It's the only way. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want any part of it. But something in me, something I couldn't fight, told me I had no choice. The chains fell away, as if they had never been there, and the door creaked open, revealing a dark, swirling abyss beneath. I could feel the coldness of it seeping through the cracks. Something ancient, something hungry, was waiting. You've done your part, Silva said, their voice distant, like a memory. Now it's time to finish it. And I knew then that the station, the fuel, the thing under the earth, they had all been waiting for me. I had fed it all along. And now it was time to give more. Everything inside me screamed to run, to flee from the horror I had uncovered. But I couldn't move. The ritual had already begun, and I was its last offering. I'd been up for too long. The clocks inside the station always seemed to run slow at night. Or maybe it was just me, but the time felt wrong, like it was stretching or slipping between my fingers, refusing to stay put. The more I tried to focus on the hours, the harder it became to keep track. And that damn 2:03 a.m. Every night, right on schedule, like a call I couldn't ignore. But tonight was different. I'd already caught myself zoning out twice while stocking the cooler. The beer cans on the shelf blurred together in a way they never had before. I rubbed my eyes, trying to snap out of it, but it didn't help. I felt like I was stuck in a loop. My fingers trembled just a little as I reached for the last bottle of iced tea. The lid popped off too easily, like the bottle was expecting me to open it. Then I heard it, the faint hum of the old fuel pump in the corner. It wasn't enough to make the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, but it was enough to pull me back to the present. Just like the way the shadows outside seemed to flicker for a split second whenever I wasn't looking directly at them. I turned the corner, half expecting to see something out of place, but the place was as it always was. Old, dimly lit, quiet. Too quiet. The register was empty. The lights buzzed overhead. The cameras? Still working, or so I thought. I checked them all. They were fine. Maybe the tape was starting to get old. Maybe the wiring was shot. But it wasn't just the footage that was glitching. I was starting to glitch, too. I didn't even realize I had been standing there for a minute, staring at the empty register. My mind had wandered off again. I glanced out the window. The fog was heavier tonight, creeping up on the station like a slow tide. I hated the fog. It made everything feel like it was pressing in, like the world was trying to squeeze you out of existence. It made the road feel endless, and the trees weren't trees anymore. They were just shapes, dark, jagged shapes that crowded in around me when I wasn't paying attention. There was a knock on the door. My heart jumped. The glass on the door shimmered in the dim light. I looked up, trying to focus, but the knock didn't come again. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe I was hearing things. But then it came again. Another knock, but this time it was different. It wasn't just a tap. It was like something was trying to get in. Something that knew I was there. I grabbed the door handle, but stopped myself. Something wasn't right. I pulled my hand back and leaned against the counter, staring at the door. My breath started to feel too hot in my chest. I wiped my forehead, but my fingers were slick with sweat. I tried to calm myself down. It was just a guy looking for gas. That's all. I turned to the register, and that's when I saw it. The name tag on the counter. It had my name on it, but it looked different somehow. The letters weren't quite right, like they were shifting before my eyes. I reached out, my fingers twitching, but before I could touch it, the name tag disappeared, just vanished. I blinked, rubbing my eyes, and when I opened them again, I felt it. Something had changed. The air was too thick, like it was pressing in on me from all sides. I could hear my pulse in my ears. "John," a voice whispered. I froze. It wasn't a whisper from the radio. It wasn't from the speaker. It wasn't even from outside. It came from inside my head. The lights flickered, and for a moment, the world seemed to blink, like a second was lost. The buzzing of the lights became deafening. A high-pitched sound, like static, filled the room. The shadows grew darker, thicker. I felt the floor shift under me, and when I looked down, I swear the ground was moving, undulating like it was alive. The door rattled again, this time more violently. It felt like someone was trying to force their way in. A low groan reverberated through the walls. I stepped back, hands shaking. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't focus. I turned toward the cameras, and I saw it again. The blank spot, the one that kept getting bigger, the one that never showed up on the footage. It was getting closer to me. That's when I realized there was something standing just outside the glass. I couldn't move. I stared, but couldn't see what it was. It was just a shadow, a black shape pressed against the fog, the edges too sharp, too wrong. It moved, but it didn't walk. It just was there. And then, the name tag. It reappeared. My name. Only it wasn't my name anymore. It was someone else's. I tried to scream, but my voice was lost in the static. I tried to move, but my feet were cemented to the floor. The lights flickered one last time, and I heard it. I've been waiting. The door smashed open. It's the night. Everything unravels. The air is thick with electricity, so heavy I can almost taste it, like something's crawling on the back of my tongue. The gas station is quieter than usual. Not even the crickets in the woods are chirping. The fog hangs in the air, thick and damp, swallowing the few weak lights that flicker above the pumps. I'm not sure why I'm still here. Maybe it's because I can't walk away. Every night, I feel like I'm getting closer to something I don't understand, but something inside me keeps pulling me toward it. Something I can't shake. Something I don't even want to know about. I stare at the register. The numbers are still there, ghostly on the screen. 2:03 a.m. The clock ticks forward. 2:04. I know it's coming. It always happens the same way. But tonight feels different. The air shifts. The temperature drops. The lights flicker. And then, the hum of the fuel pump starts. I didn't turn them on. I don't even have time to think before the first pump clicks and whirs, the nozzle jerking like it's been possessed. The sound is wrong, too sharp, too loud. I push the door open and step outside, my heart beating like a drum in my chest. The sky is empty, the woods are silent. But I can feel them. They're out there, watching. The woods aren't just dark tonight. It's as if they're waiting, holding their breath. Then I see it. A shadow moves at the edge of the lot, just past the fuel tanks. It's not a person. It's not a car. It's something else. My breath catches in my throat. I blink, and then it's gone. I don't know how long I stand there, staring into the blackness. But then I hear it again, this time closer. A rustle. A figure emerges from the fog, moving slowly. The moment it steps into the dim light, I can see the face. Silva. They're different tonight. More stretched. Their eyes are too wide, their skin too pale. Their mouth twitches in a smile that doesn't seem right, like a mask that's been worn too long. They don't walk like a normal person. They move with a fluidity that feels like they're bending space around them. John, Silva says. Their voice is colder, almost metallic. I don't answer. I can't. Silva steps closer. I feel their gaze cutting through me, like they know exactly what's going on inside my head. It's like they're reading my thoughts, poking through my mind, tearing it apart one piece at a time. You don't understand, do you? Silva asks. They sound almost disappointed. It's already too late for you to walk away. You've already opened the door. I'm not opening any doors. I snap, trying to steady my voice, though I can feel my legs shaking. What the hell is this? What do you want from me? Silva takes another step forward. There's something wrong with their shadow, something unnatural. It stretches out behind them, shifting like it's alive, moving on its own. You are the door, John, they say softly. You just don't know it yet. I feel the ground beneath my feet tremble. My stomach drops. It's not just the station anymore. It's everything. The air tastes like dust, thick with static, vibrating with something primal, something ancient. I look around, but everything's slipping. The edges of the world are starting to blur. The gas station's lights flicker again, and the pumps hiss, spilling more fuel into the night air. The shadow behind Silva stretches even longer. It's not a shadow. It's a shape, a presence, a thing. You've been feeding it, John. Every night, it gets stronger. The fuel, it's not for cars. It's to feed the maw. The thing that's been waiting underneath all this time. The thing that needs you. I feel sick. I look down at the ground, and the asphalt is cracked. I can see through it, through the earth. Beneath the gas station, beneath the woods, there's something massive, moving, pulsing. And then I hear it. A low, guttural hum. It's coming from the earth, vibrating up through my bones. The sound gets louder, deeper, like it's speaking to me. What is it? I whisper, unable to stop myself. Silva's smile widens. It's everything, and it's about to wake up. I feel the ground shifting beneath me, like it's alive, moving, calling. The air is thick now, like I'm drowning in it. The lights blink once, then flicker out completely. It's so dark now, I can barely see Silva in front of me, but I know they're there. I feel them. And then, through the darkness, I hear a voice, deep, distorted, hungry. You've let out, John. You can't put it back. And just like that, I feel the station tremble, a wave of pressure like something's trying to break free from the ground, pushing against the limits of the world. No, I say, my voice a hoarse whisper. No, this can't be real. Silva laughs softly, a sound that sends a chill crawling down my spine. It's already too real, John, they say. You just need to let it happen. I look around one last time, the fog swirling, the trees bending in unnatural angles. The forest is alive, moving, as if it's part of something much larger. The pumps are still running. The fuel is spilling. I know what I have to do. I take a deep breath, my hands trembling. I walk to the pump, the noise deafening now, and I look down at the register. The numbers are flashing again. 2:04 a.m. I know this is the moment. I have to stop it. But as I reach for the lever, the ground trembles harder. The air snaps. The maw is awake. And I realize it's too late. There's no stopping it now. I don't know if I made the right choice. I don't know if I can escape this place. All I know is it's the final transaction, and I'm the one who paid. The station feels different tonight. The air is thick, like it's holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I can feel it in the back of my neck, the same itch I've been ignoring for days. But tonight, it's more than just unease. It's wrong. Like I'm not meant to be here anymore. But I don't know where else to go. Where else would I go? The clocks tick down to 2:03 a.m. My shift is almost over. I should be fine, just like the other nights. But the place feels heavy now. I've been hearing things. Small noises in the walls. Scraping, whispering, like the station itself is trying to speak. I don't even need to look at the monitor. The fuel's draining. I know it. I can feel it. A faint hum under the floor, the lights flickering again, but it's not just the lights this time. There's something pulling at me, dragging me down, like the weight of 1,000 eyes pressing on my skin. Then I hear it, a soft shuffle outside, just before the pumps begin their unnatural roar. The hum turns into a growl, and the station shakes. My heart lurches. I turn to the door. Silva's standing there. No truck, no car, just Silva, dressed in that same worn jacket and faded jeans, their gray eyes gleaming in the darkness like polished stone. They don't move at first, just stand there, watching me. They know. Tonight's the night, Silva says, voice smooth and cold, almost too calm. You've opened the door, John. You can't shut it now. I try to speak, but my throat tightens. My mouth feels dry, like the air's been sucked out. The words don't come. Instead, I feel that pull like I'm tethered to something beneath, something ancient and hungry. The lights flicker again, and the room goes dark. Then the sound. A low, grinding thud. The ground shakes beneath my feet, and I hear the faintest whisper of something moving in the walls, under the floorboards, crawling toward the door. No one can hear it but me. And I know, it's coming for me. I should run. I should grab the keys, lock the doors, do something to stop it. But I can't. My legs feel frozen, and the weight of whatever's coming presses against my chest, making it harder to breathe. Silva steps forward. I don't know when they moved, but now they're right in front of me, their breath cold on my face. You were always going to be part of it, Silva whispers, like they've been waiting for this moment. It's why you were brought here. I try to say something, anything, but the words get stuck behind my teeth. I want to scream. I need to scream, but nothing comes out. I can't move. My body's not my own anymore. Then the room cracks. The air snaps, like the whole world is splitting in half. There's a sound, sharp and wet, like something being torn open from the inside. A groan, deep and guttural, echoes from beneath the station. The thing below is awake now, and it's hungry. Silva watches as the dark shape rises. It's not human. It's not even alive in the way I understand it. It's a mass of black shadows, stretching out of the floor like oil being spilled over a table, reaching, pulling, feasting on the memories of the world, pulling them down to where it waits. Stop it. I choke, but I'm not even sure if I'm speaking. It's all becoming a blur. My vision starts to distort, the shadows creeping in like the edges of a nightmare, everything bending and twisting around me. You can't stop it, Silva says, almost pityingly. Not anymore. You're part of it now. You always were. You opened the door, John. And now you're going to keep it open. I hear the growl again, and then everything goes silent. I don't know how much time passes. The clock's still ticking, but it feels like hours. Days. Years. The world has stopped moving. The lights flicker one last time, and when they come back on, I'm alone. The thing beneath the station is still there, but it's quiet now, waiting. And I'm standing in the middle of the room, unable to move, unable to feel anything but the overwhelming weight of being forgotten. I look around the gas station. It's still the same, and yet, nothing's the same. The pumps hum with a quiet hunger. The shelves are stocked, but no one will ever buy anything again. The sign outside still says open, but it's not for anyone else. It's just there for me. I'm the keeper now, the keeper of nothing. I think about the people I've known, the faces, the voices, the days I've spent in this lonely place. But I can't remember their names. I can't remember what it felt like to laugh, to talk, to be seen. I reach for the door to the office, but I feel nothing. It's like I never existed at all. I glance at the clock. 2:03 a.m. again. The same time it always is. The same time it will always be. I reach into my pocket for my keys. My hands are shaking, but I stop before I pull them out. I look at the door, the place where the light should be. The door that leads outside, into the world I once knew. I don't open it. I don't even try. Because I know now, I was never meant to leave. And no one will remember that I was ever here. The gas station stands in the middle of the highway, open to anyone who needs to stop. But there's no one coming. Not anymore. Story 2. I first heard on a Tuesday. The fog was thick that morning, as it always is this time of year in our town. It wrapped itself around the streets, like the whole place was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I've been up early, as usual, pushing through another day at the shop, the scent of oil and grease still lingering on my hands from yesterday's work. I wasn't expecting anything out of the ordinary. Nothing ever happens here, really. It's a quiet place, tucked in the mountains, forgotten by the world except for the occasional lost tourist who never stays long enough to get comfortable. But that morning, something did happen. I was sitting in my truck, parked outside the diner, staring at the weathered menu taped to the window. The place was practically deserted, just the usual crowd, mostly older folks who always seem to have the same routine. I'd been coming here for years and had learned to ignore the hum of the diner's old jukebox, playing the same tunes every week. But today, instead of the usual songs, I heard something different. The radio in my truck, an old thing with more dust than buttons, crackled to life on its own. I didn't touch it, didn't turn it on. It just started. At first, it was faint, nothing more than a whisper coming through the static. A soft, haunting melody, almost like someone was playing a piano in the distance, its notes dripping like water from a leaky faucet. I didn't think much of it. Maybe it was some glitch, or maybe the radio station was running a new broadcast, though it was still early, and nothing new ever came from our town's only radio station. That's the way things worked here. Predictable, quiet, safe. But then the song hit. It wasn't anything special, at least not at first. The melody was simple, looping over and over in a way that made it hard to ignore. It had this almost rhythmic pull, a cadence that stayed with you even when the music stopped. It wasn't the sort of song you'd hear on the radio in big cities. It wasn't the kind of song that made you want to hum along. But for some reason, I couldn't shake it off. It felt wrong. It was like the air had thickened around me, like something wasn't quite right. I couldn't explain it, but the longer I sat there, the harder it was to focus on anything else. The melody tugged at me, its notes sinking deep into my chest. There was something off about it. But it wasn't until I went inside the diner and heard the same song on the jukebox that I started to wonder if it was more than just a coincidence. The few folks sitting at the counter were all talking in hushed voices, their eyes flicking nervously from the jukebox to each other. No one was looking at the waitress. No one was touching their coffee. The usual chatter was replaced by this odd, collective silence, like everyone was waiting for something. And then I realized everyone was hearing the same thing. The song. That damn song. It was playing from the jukebox. It was playing on the radio in my truck. It was in the air. It was everywhere. What is this? I asked the waitress, almost before I could stop myself. She looked at me blankly for a second, as though she hadn't heard me. The radio? She asked, her voice slow, like she was waking from a dream. Yeah, it's all anyone's been talking about. The new station, 107.5. You heard it. I nodded. I didn't have to ask how she knew. Everyone in town had heard it. You could feel it, buzzing under the surface of every conversation, scratching at the back of your neck like a tick that just wouldn't stop. It's all they're playing, she said, a frown creasing her forehead. That song. Over and over. I could tell she was trying to ignore it, trying to pretend like it wasn't affecting her. But I saw it in her eyes, the same unease that had settled into mine. I didn't know then what I do now, but I can tell you this. That song wasn't just some catchy tune. It didn't belong here. It didn't belong in this town, in this quiet, fog-drenched corner of the world. It felt like it was seeping into everything, into the walls, into our thoughts, into our lives. And, for some reason, I couldn't stop listening. I didn't know why at the time. I just knew that when the song played, it was like the world around me faded a little. Like everything was getting just a little bit harder to focus on, just a little bit more distant. The song was nothing, really. Or at least, that's what I tried to tell myself. Just a melody. Just a loop. Nothing to worry about. But as I sat in the diner, looking around at the people I'd known all my life, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Something was changing. And before I knew it, we'd all be caught up in something far worse than a song. Something that, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't outrun. But that was still a few days away. For now, all I could do was listen, and wonder just how long it would take before the song drove us all insane. I noticed a change before anyone spoke a word about it. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, like a shadow that clung to the edge of a sunset. A quiet shift in the air, the kind of thing you only feel when you've lived in a place long enough to know when something's off. The fog that morning was thick, like it had decided to settle in and stay for a while, pressing down on the streets and curling around the trees. It made the town feel smaller than usual, more closed in, like we were all trapped under some heavy, suffocating blanket. I was walking to the shop when I first saw it. Bill, the old mechanic who used to work next door, was standing in front of his garage with his hands on his hips, staring off into the trees. He didn't wave, didn't even look at me, just stood there, staring. I called out to him, but he didn't respond. Not at first. "Bill," I said again, walking toward him. He blinked, as if waking from a trance, then slowly turned his head toward me. His eyes were wide, and his face was pale. "Rabio, you hear that damn song?" His voice was hoarse, like he'd been yelling, or maybe just thinking about it for too long. I frowned. I hadn't seen Bill so shaken in all the years I'd known him. He was always gruff, but never like this. "Yeah, I've heard it," I said, trying to play it off, but the air around us felt wrong. "What about it?" Bill shook his head slowly, his hands still trembling at his sides. "It's messing with my head, been hearing it in my sleep. I can't shake it. It don't sound right, Rabio. You've heard it too, right?" I nodded, but I wasn't sure what to say. The song had been on the radio for days now, looping over and over. At first, it had been just annoying, like a bad song you can't get out of your head. But the more I listened to it, the more it felt like something was wrong. The melody twisted in ways I couldn't explain, the lyrics barely there, almost whispered, like someone was speaking from the edge of a dream. I didn't want to admit it, but it was starting to get to me too. I left Bill standing there, still staring into the trees, and headed into the shop, trying to focus on the engine in front of me. But it was no use. I couldn't stop thinking about that song, even though I tried. I could hear it in the back of my mind, faint but clear, like it was always there, lurking just out of reach. By mid-morning, I was noticing it more and more, people acting different, walking down the streets like they were somewhere else. I saw Annette, the waitress at the diner, talking to herself while she was refilling coffee cups, her eyes wide and unfocused. I waved to her, but she didn't see me. She just kept mumbling, like she was having a conversation with someone who wasn't there. Then, there was Terry, the town sheriff. He came into the shop, his uniform askew, and I could tell right away something wasn't right. He was usually all business, but today his hands were shaking when he picked up a wrench I'd left on the counter. "You hear it too, huh?" he said, his voice tight. I nodded, setting down the wrench I'd been working with. "It's everywhere, man." Terry glanced around, like he was afraid someone might overhear. "I don't know what it is, but it's like it's changing people. You ever notice how folks can't seem to focus anymore? How they're always looking over their shoulder?" I thought about that for a second. It was true. People were jumpier, more distracted than usual. Their eyes darted from one thing to the next, never staying in one place for too long. The sense of unease was growing stronger, settling into my bones. I tried to shake it off. It had to be the song, right? Just a stupid tune on a broken station, messing with everyone's heads. But the longer I thought about it, the more I felt like it wasn't just the song. There was something else, something darker, that was changing the way the town felt. Something that had been here before, maybe long before that damn song started. That afternoon, I stopped by the post office to drop off a package. Mabel, the postmistress, was sitting behind the counter, staring at the wall like it was the most interesting thing she'd ever seen. She didn't even greet me when I walked in, which was unlike her. "Mabel," I said, trying to get her attention. "You okay?" She blinked, as if waking up from a long sleep. "Oh, Rabio, I didn't hear you come in." Her voice was soft, like she wasn't fully present. "Been hearing that song too, haven't you?" "Yeah," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "It's driving everyone nuts." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Funny thing is, it don't feel like it's the song anymore. It feels like it's in us, doesn't it? Like it's inside our heads, making us think things we shouldn't." I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. Mabel wasn't one to talk like that. It felt wrong, like she wasn't really her anymore. I left the post office, my mind racing. Something wasn't right. This wasn't just the song messing with people's heads. This felt bigger, like we were all part of something we didn't understand. And the worst part, I didn't know how to stop it. The next few days blurred together. I tried to keep working, tried to keep my mind occupied with the familiar hum of the shop, the grind of metal on metal. But the town, the people, they were all changing. Slowly, quietly. No one was the same. Not really. I heard more stories, people seeing things, hearing voices, speaking out of turn. It was like the song had begun to seep into their very souls, changing them, twisting them into something unrecognizable. And the worst part? The worst part was that no one seemed to care. Everyone kept going about their day, pretending nothing was wrong, while the town slowly fell apart around them. It wasn't until I went to the diner for lunch that it hit me, really hit me, how bad things had gotten. Annette was serving a table, but she wasn't herself. She kept refilling the coffee cups without saying a word, her movements stiff and robotic, like she wasn't even thinking. Then, as she passed my table, she stopped, looked at me like she didn't know who I was. For a second, I thought she was going to say something, but instead, she just turned and walked away. I watched her go, feeling a cold pit open up in my stomach. Whatever was happening to this town, it wasn't just the song anymore. It was something far worse. And I was starting to think we might all be doomed. I couldn't shake the feeling that the town was slipping away, that I was slipping away, and no one even knew how to stop it. No one except Carl. And somehow, I felt like he knew exactly what was happening. And worse, I was starting to think he was the one behind it all. I had to find out. I had to know what he was hiding. Because if I didn't, I was pretty damn sure this song would be the least of our problems. I'd heard the rumors, of course. Who hasn't? The new radio station that just popped up out of nowhere. At first, everyone thought it was just another passing trend. A new station meant new music, right? But then the whispers started. The song on 107.5 FM, it didn't stop. It played day and night, and it wasn't like anything anyone had ever heard before. I figured it was just some gimmick to grab attention, but when I heard it myself, I understood why people were starting to go a little mad. It wasn't a regular song. There was something wrong about it. At first, I couldn't put my finger on it. It had a steady beat, like something from the 70s, a bit electronic, but there was a static undertone, a low hum that crawled under your skin. I couldn't stop hearing it. It wasn't loud enough to dominate your thoughts, but it lingered in the background, like a fly buzzing around your head that you couldn't swat away. So when I decided to visit the radio station, I wasn't expecting much. I thought it might be a small, temporary setup, some old guy tinkering with equipment in a cramped office. I was wrong. The building was new, newer than it had any right to be in a town like ours. It looked out of place, like it belonged in a bigger city, with glass windows that gleamed in the morning sun. The design was sleek, almost clinical, the kind of place you walk into and feel like you need to take your shoes off. As I stood in front of the glass doors, I hesitated. Maybe I was looking for trouble, but curiosity always gets the better of me. I stepped inside, and a cold rush of air hit me. The place was quieter than I expected. It was like a hospital waiting room, sterile and clinical. No one behind the counter, no music playing in the background, just a faint hum of electronics. I walked toward the front desk, where a young woman sat, her eyes glued to the screen in front of her. She barely looked up when I approached. "I'm here to speak to someone about the station," I said, trying to sound casual. Her eyes flickered up at me, just for a second, before she nodded and pointed down a narrow hallway. "You'll want to talk to Carl. His office is at the end." Carl. The name was familiar. He was the one who'd opened the station. Not much was known about him, except that he'd arrived recently, had money, and didn't waste time. He didn't seem like the type to spend much time in small towns. I followed the hallway, my boots clicking against the tile. It was all too quiet. There was something unnerving about it. No sounds of people working, no chattering, no radio stations blaring. I felt like I was walking into a place I wasn't supposed to be. I finally reached the end of the hallway, where the door to Carl's office stood ajar. I knocked, though I didn't really need to. The door creaked, opened slowly, as if it were waiting for me. Carl was sitting behind a large, dark desk, his hands folded in front of him. He was calm, too calm. It was the first thing I noticed about him. He didn't have the air of a man who'd just opened a radio station. He was dressed sharply in a suit, his hair combed neatly. His eyes were dark, almost black, like there was something hidden deep inside of him. "Radio, wasn't it?" he said, his voice smooth and collected. He didn't stand up to greet me, didn't make any move to acknowledge my presence in any kind of welcoming way. Instead, he just looked at me with an almost curious expression, like he already knew exactly who I was and why I'd come. I didn't say anything at first. I wasn't sure what to ask. I'd expected to walk in, ask a few questions, and leave with a sense of closure. But now that I was here, something about Carl made my throat tighten. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was more like I was being sized up, like a fly caught in a web. "You're the one behind the new station, right?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Yes," he replied simply. He didn't elaborate. There was no enthusiasm in his voice, no excitement. He said it like it was a fact, something he was stating just to get out of the way, as if it didn't matter much. "You're playing the same song over and over." I continued, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "It's driving people crazy. They can't stop talking about it." Carl didn't blink. His fingers tapped the desk once, twice before he answered. "It's an experiment," he said, his voice low, almost whispering. "Music is a powerful thing. People don't understand its influence. But it's a tool. It can shape the mind, alter thoughts. It can change things. You'll see soon enough." I didn't know how to respond to that. Part of me wanted to laugh it off, but there was something in his eyes that made my blood run cold. He didn't seem like a man joking. He seemed like someone who knew exactly what he was doing, and knew that I wouldn't be able to stop him. "You're messing with people's heads," I said, my voice stronger now, though I felt uneasy. Carl leaned back in his chair, his gaze never leaving me. "No, I'm not messing with anyone," he replied, his tone almost friendly, like he was explaining a simple concept to a child. "I'm simply giving them what they want. I'm offering them something they can't get anywhere else." "You're breaking them," I said, unable to stop myself. Carl's lips curled into a faint smile. "Am I? Or am I just revealing who they really are? You'll understand soon enough." That smile, it wasn't a pleasant one. It was thin, sharp, like something that had been stitched together from pieces of a much darker puzzle. I didn't know what he meant, but I felt it. Whatever game Carl was playing, it wasn't just music. It was something deeper, something darker. I turned to leave, but Carl's voice stopped me. "Be careful, Rabio," he said, his voice smooth but edged with something that made my skin crawl. "The song is only the beginning. You won't be able to escape it. None of you will." I didn't answer. I just walked out of his office and down the hallway, feeling the weight of his words pressing against me. The door shut behind me with a soft thud, and I swear I could hear the faintest echo of that song in the back of my mind. As I stepped outside, I couldn't shake the feeling that Carl wasn't just playing a game. He was controlling it. The town, the people, the song. And now, he was playing with me. I didn't know what he had planned, but I had a feeling I was about to find out. The town was changing. People were changing. And I don't know if I could have stopped it even if I tried. At first, it was subtle. I noticed little things. An old man in the diner, the one who always sat in the corner booth, shaking his head and muttering to himself. His coffee cup rattled against the saucer, but he never seemed to notice. He used to be sharp, the kind of guy who'd remind you to get your oil changed before you even thought about it. Now he just sat there, staring into his mug like it held all the answers. I thought maybe I was just imagining things. After all, I wasn't exactly in the best mental state myself. The song that kept playing on the radio, over and over, had burrowed its way into my brain. I couldn't escape it. It was there when I woke up, when I worked on cars, when I went to sleep. That same tune, that same haunting melody that seemed to follow me everywhere. But I wasn't the only one hearing it. The more I paid attention, the more I started noticing the odd behavior in people. Mrs. Adams, the sweet woman who ran the bakery down the street, no longer greeted customers with a smile. She'd stare at the counter for a long time, eyes glazed, before realizing someone was standing in front of her. Her hands shook as she handed over the bread. I heard her whispering to herself, something about the end, and it's too late. But when I asked if she was okay, she just smiled like everything was fine, her eyes darting around like she was looking for something she couldn't find. And then there was my friend Mark. Mark, who I'd known since we were kids, had always been steady, practical. If I ever needed advice, or just someone to talk to, he was the guy I'd go to. But now, when I saw him, it was like he wasn't even there. I'd catch him pacing outside the diner, muttering under his breath. 1 minute, he'd be laughing about something, and the next, his face would go blank. I tried talking to him, tried asking what was going on, but he'd just stare at me like I was the one who was off. "You hear it, don't you?" he asked me once, his voice shaking. "The song. It's calling us. It's too late to stop it, Rabio. We're already gone." I thought he was joking at first, trying to mess with me, but his eyes were wide with fear. I hadn't seen him this scared since the time we were kids, and thought we saw something in the woods behind the town. I couldn't tell if it was the song getting to him, or if he was just losing it like everyone else. But something was off. The song wasn't just on the radio anymore. It was in the streets, in the air, in the silence between words. I started hearing it when I was working in the shop. The hum of the engine would fade, and for a split second, I'd hear that damn tune, softer than a whisper. And every time, it sent a chill down my spine. I wasn't the only one feeling it, though. People were getting paranoid. They'd lock their doors at night, even if nothing had happened. Some of them started having trouble sleeping, talking about hearing footsteps outside their windows. The old folks at the diner said they'd hear tapping on their doors when they were alone, but when they opened it, no one was there. It wasn't long before things started falling apart. People who had lived in this town for years, people I'd grown up with, started acting like they were strangers. They'd forget simple things, like where they were, what they were doing. Some started speaking in half sentences, trailing off mid-thought like their minds had just disappeared. I remember one afternoon, I was working on a car when Judy, the waitress at the diner, came in. She'd always been sweet, chatty, friendly. But this time, her eyes were wide, and her hands were shaking as she set a cup of coffee down in front of me. I didn't say anything at first. I just watched her. She didn't look like herself. Her usual perkiness was gone, replaced with a hollow, blank expression. "You all right, Judy?" I asked. She didn't answer right away, just stared at me, her lips trembling. Then, finally, she whispered, "It's the song. It's everywhere." "What do you mean?" She looked around, like she was afraid someone was listening. "It's all in our heads, radio. We can't escape it. It's in the walls, in the trees, in the air. It's driving us mad. Can't you hear it?" I didn't know what to say. My thoughts were already tangled in that same melody. Maybe it was driving me mad too. The longer I stayed in the town, the more the lines between reality and the song began to blur. And then it hit me. The worst part was that no one was really talking about it. At least not openly. People just started pretending like everything was normal. But you could see it in their eyes. The fear, the confusion. The song had taken root. Mark stopped showing up at the shop. Judy stopped working the late shift. Mrs. Adams closed the bakery early, even though there was still a line of customers waiting outside. The town was shrinking in on itself, pulling away from the world. And it wasn't just the people who were changing. The whole damn place felt different. The trees were darker. The fog was thicker. The air smelled of something sour, like rotting wood or something worse. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were all being pulled towards something we couldn't control. Like the town itself was being dragged under, inch by inch, by the same song we'd all heard on the radio. It was too late to turn it off. I went back to the shop, but even there, it was impossible to escape. The radio was on, just like always, playing that same damn song. Over and over. It was louder now, buzzing in my skull, and I realized then that I wasn't the only one who heard it. Everyone was hearing it, and nobody was going to stop it, not unless we figured out where it came from. But was that even possible? Could we stop it before it drove us all mad? I didn't know. I just knew that something had to be done, before we were all gone, before we were all part of the song. I couldn't shake it anymore. The song, the madness, the feeling that something was slowly squeezing the life out of the town. It was everywhere, like a creeping fog, wrapping itself around our minds until we couldn't escape. People were losing themselves, one by one, and I was starting to feel it too. I had to know what was behind it all. I had to understand what Carl was really doing. I tried to ignore it, to tell myself that it was just the stress of living in a small town with too much time on our hands. But the more I thought about it, the more I couldn't deny the truth. That song was no accident. Carl's calm, unflappable demeanor, his refusal to talk about the song's origins, and the way everyone around me seemed to be spiraling into madness. None of it added up. There had to be more to it. I needed answers, and the only place to get them was the radio station itself. It was late when I decided to go. The streets were quiet, and the fog was thick as ever, pressing down on everything like a heavy blanket. I told myself I was just going to take a quick look, maybe sneak around the back and see if I could find something, anything, that would explain what was going on. Maybe I'd find a hidden clue, a record, or a piece of equipment that wasn't supposed to be there. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I knew I had to try. The radio station sat at the edge of town, a small, nondescript building with cracked windows and an old, rusted antenna sticking up from the roof. It was one of those places that had always felt out of place, outdated, forgotten, like the town itself had barely noticed it existed. I'd never given it much thought before, but now it felt like the very heart of the madness. I crept around to the back of the building, my breath fogging up the cold night air as I tried the door. Locked, of course, but that didn't stop me. I'd been in enough abandoned buildings to know how to get around things like locks. I found a window on the side, just barely cracked open. My heart was pounding in my chest as I squeezed through, landing on the dusty floor inside. The air smelled stale, like old paper and something faintly metallic. It was silent in there, too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're being watched. The walls were lined with shelves of records, dusty and forgotten. But it wasn't the music I was looking for. It was the truth. I moved through the station's dark halls, trying to avoid making noise. The lights were low, flickering every now and then, casting strange shadows on the walls. I made my way down a narrow corridor and found what I was looking for: Carl's office. The door creaked as I pushed it open. Inside, it was a mess of papers and half-empty coffee cups, but there was something strange about it. The room felt sterile, as though Carl didn't belong here. There was an unsettling calmness to the space, a coldness that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I started rifling through the papers on the desk, hoping to find something useful. Old contracts, notes about the station's programming, nothing out of the ordinary. But then I saw it. At the back of the room, behind a row of file cabinets, was a small door. It was hidden in plain sight, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. I pushed it open cautiously, my heart racing. The room beyond was small, just a few steps wide, with shelves stacked high with records. Old, worn records, some in plain covers, others in protective sleeves. But there was one shelf that caught my attention. In the middle, there was a small stack of records, all identical, all neatly arranged, and one in particular that seemed to call out to me. It was the one on top. The cover was plain, almost too plain. Just a black square with no title, no markings of any kind. But as soon as I touched it, I felt something shift in the air. A strange, electric hum that made my skin crawl. I pulled it off the shelf and turned it over in my hands. The label was cracked, the writing barely legible. I couldn't make out the words, but I didn't need to. I knew, somehow, that this was the source of the song, the one playing on repeat, driving everyone insane. My fingers trembled as I slid the record out of its sleeve and placed it carefully on the turntable in the corner of the room. I didn't want to play it. I knew it was dangerous, that something awful would happen if I did, but I had to know. I had to understand. So, I turned the dial, and for the briefest moment, nothing happened. And then the music started. It was soft at first, just a whisper of sound, but then it grew louder, more insistent. The same haunting melody, the same distorted voice, singing a language I couldn't understand. But I didn't need to. It didn't matter. The sound wrapped itself around my mind, pulling me deeper into its grip. I could feel my thoughts begin to slip away, replaced by an overwhelming sense of dread. I had turned off, but my hands wouldn't move. The song wasn't just music anymore. It was a force, something far more powerful than anything I had ever experienced. I tried to look away, but the music held me, trapped me in a place where time didn't exist. And then I saw it. A flash of images, faces twisted in pain, eyes wide with terror, memories I couldn't place, flashes of people I knew, their faces contorted by fear. The song, it was doing something to me. It was breaking my mind, just like it had done to everyone else. I staggered back, my hands fumbling for the turntable, desperate to stop the music, but it was no use. The record was already working its magic, pulling me deeper into its nightmare. I don't know how long I stood there, trapped in that room, listening to the song, feeling my sanity slip away with every passing second. But eventually, I found the strength to break free, to tear myself away from the turntable. I turned it off, and the silence hit me like a slap. I stood there, breathing heavily, my mind reeling. I could still hear the echoes of the song in my head, a faint whisper that wouldn't go away. The truth was clear now. Carl wasn't just a man. He was something else, something ancient, something that had been using that song to control us all. The record, the song, it wasn't just a tune. It was a weapon. And now, I had to figure out how to stop it before it consumed everything. But one thing was certain. Whatever was coming next, It was going to be worse than anything I could have imagined. I had opened the door, and now there was no turning back. It's hard to remember when the town started to slip. Maybe it was gradual, like the slow change of the seasons, or maybe it was all at once, like the first gust of wind before a storm. Either way, it didn't take long before everything felt wrong. I noticed it first at the mechanic shop. It was late afternoon, the sun hanging low over the mountains, casting long shadows down the narrow streets. I was elbow-deep in grease, working on an old truck that barely ran. The radio was on, of course, 107.5, the station that played nothing but that damn song. The melody, a soft, luring hum that burrowed into your head, played again, just like always. At first, I thought it was just the usual. People came in and out, asking about their cars, not paying much attention to the music. But then something shifted. Tommy Harrow, a regular, wandered in. He looked different. Tommy was the kind of guy who always had something to say, always cheerful, always with a story or a joke. But today he was off. His eyes were glassy, his voice slow and uncertain. "Hey, Rabio," he said, but his words came out wrong. "Hey, you hear it? The song, I mean." I nodded, wiping my hands on a rag. "Yeah, it's on repeat, like always." Tommy leaned in way too close. It's in my head, all the time. I can't shake it." I glanced at him, trying to laugh it off. "It's just a song, Tommy. You're overthinking it." He didn't laugh. His eyes twitched, and for a moment, I thought he was going to say something more, but he just stared at the floor. The music played on, the same hypnotic rhythm filling the silence between us. Tommy shuffled out a minute later without another word. Something in his shuffle was off. It wasn't just his steps, it was the way his hands were twitching, like he couldn't control them. That's when I noticed it. The people outside, a couple of them, people I knew my whole life, were walking down the street, but not like they were going somewhere. They were just wandering, staring into space. Their eyes were unfocused, like they didn't see the world around them, like they didn't see me. I didn't know what to make of it, so I ignored it at first. But the oddness spread like a sickness. The whole town seemed to be infected by it. Everywhere I looked, someone was caught in that same trance, eyes glazed over, lost in the song. Even the children, who should have been laughing and playing, stood still, silent, listening. It was like the fog that rolled in each morning, wrapping everything in a blanket of dread. People didn't talk the way they used to. Conversations were fragmented. They'd start sentences and forget them halfway through. Faces twitched, like something inside them was trying to get out. At first, I thought I was imagining things. But then it got worse. Much worse. That night, as I lay in bed, I could hear the song. It wasn't from the radio. It wasn't from outside. It was inside me, pressing against my skull. I tried to ignore it, but the melody burrowed deeper, tugging at my thoughts, slipping into my dreams. I woke up in the middle of the night, gasping for air, heart pounding in my chest. It was like the song was alive. The next morning, I went into town. Things had changed overnight. The streets were emptier than usual. People who used to greet me with a nod or a smile now passed me by without a second glance. I saw people in the square standing perfectly still, their faces vacant, as if the world around them didn't matter. I tried talking to a few of them, old friends, people I knew my whole life, but when I spoke, they didn't respond. They didn't even blink. They just stood there, their eyes locked on the horizon, lost in the same rhythm that had taken over everyone else. I wanted to shout. I wanted to shake them and ask what was happening, but I didn't. Something in me, some nagging instinct, told me that this was bigger than I could handle. I needed to know more, to understand why the song was doing this. So, I did what I swore I'd never do. I went back to the radio station. I don't know what I was hoping to find. Maybe I thought Carl would be there. Maybe I thought I could just ask him what was going on. But when I got there, the station was quiet. Not a single sound from the radio. I felt a chill run down my spine. I'd never seen the station like this. Empty, dark, like it had been abandoned for years. And then I heard it. The faintest hum, coming from the back room. The door was cracked open, just enough for me to slip inside. The back room was different from the rest of the station. It felt older. Dust covered the floor, the walls, the shelves. And on the far wall, in a corner, was a strange collection of records, arranged neatly in rows. I stepped closer, drawn by some invisible force. The The records were all old, some of them cracked, others barely readable. But there was one in the back that caught my eye. It was a single black disc, shining faintly, almost as if it was alive. I reached for it, but as my fingers brushed the cover, a wave of dizziness hit me. The song surged in my head, louder now, drowning everything else out. The edges of the room started to blur. My hand shook. I stumbled back, dropping the record. I felt something cold and hard against my neck, and I spun around, but no one was there. The door slammed shut behind me. The music was everywhere. It was in my bones and my blood. It was all I could hear. That's when I realized I wasn't just hearing the song. The song was inside me, changing me. It was making me forget, making me lose control. I had to get out. I don't know how I made it back to my shop, but when I did, the town had changed completely. It was like no one could see me anymore. Like I wasn't real. I wasn't sure if I was awake. I wasn't sure if I was going mad. But I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't the only one who was losing myself. The whole town was. And the song was to blame. The radio station looked different that night. The building was still the same, a dull, gray structure tucked behind a rusted gate. But the air around it felt thick, like the fog had seeped in, clinging to everything, choking the life out of the night. I don't know what I was expecting to find. Maybe I thought Carl would be waiting for me, sitting behind his desk, calm as ever, with that smile that made my skin crawl. Or maybe I thought I'd find nothing, that the station would be empty, and it would all be over. But as I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. The song was louder now, somehow. It filled the walls, pressed against my skull, its slow, rhythmic beat hammering into my thoughts. I should have turned back, but I couldn't. Not anymore. Not with the whole town unraveling, because of that damn song. People I know my whole life were losing their minds. And I could feel myself slipping, too. The song was inside me now. It had been for days. I could hear it when I tried to sleep. I could hear it when I ate. I could even hear it when I tried to think. But here, in this station, the song was louder than ever. It felt like it was coming from everywhere at once. I forced my legs to move, dragging myself toward the back of the station. There was no one there. No one except for the humming machines and the sharp click of the record players spinning, like they were all waiting for me to make my move. I reached the hallway that led to Carl's office, my heart pounding in my chest, each beat like a drum, like the song itself. I pushed the door open, half expecting him to be sitting at his desk, perfectly composed, like a puppet master pulling the strings. But Carl wasn't there. Not yet. The room was empty, save for the dim light that flickered from the far corner, where a strange, old record player sat, glowing softly. The room seemed to pulse with it, like the song was alive, breathing, waiting. Then I heard him. His voice, smooth and cold, came from behind me. "You finally decided to come, Rabio," he said, his words slow, deliberate, like he had all the time in the world. His footsteps were quiet as he stepped into the room, the sound almost drowned out by the music that blared in my ears. "I knew you would." I turned to face him. Carl stood there, as calm as ever, dressed in that sharp suit that always looked too perfect for a place like this. His eyes, dark and unreadable, locked onto mine, as though he could see straight through me. He didn't seem surprised. Hell, he didn't even seem bothered. It was like this was all part of the plan. "I should have known it was you." I spat, my voice rough, my throat tight with the weight of the truth I'd been trying to ignore. "What the hell are you doing to this town?" Carl smiled, but it wasn't a real smile. It was the kind of smile you give when you're about to say something that will break a person's soul. "I'm giving them what they need, Rabio. I'm giving them something they've always wanted. Peace. Freedom. A way out." I shook my head. "You're tearing them apart. You're tearing me apart. All for a song? You're insane." Carl stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "Am I? Or are you just starting to understand? This song, it isn't just music. It's more than that. It's a key, Rabio. A key to the door that's been closed for so long. I'm opening it. And once that door is open, you'll see things the way they really are." His words sent a chill down my spine. I wanted to scream, to punch him, to do anything to make the voice inside my head stop. But I knew what I had to do. I couldn't just stand there and listen to him twist everything around. This had to end. I glanced over at the record player, the glowing record spinning slowly on its turntable. It called to me, The melody so familiar, yet foreign, like a dream I couldn't remember. I knew what it was. The song. The one that had been messing with my head. The one that had been breaking everyone's mind. I couldn't let it keep going. I couldn't let Carl win. I'm ending this now, I said, my voice steady even though my hand was shaking. I rushed toward the record player, my fingers already reaching for the turntable's knob. Carl laughed softly, like he knew exactly what I was going to do. You really think you can stop it? He stepped forward, his face suddenly filled with cold fury. This song has already begun. It's already inside you, Rabio. Inside everyone. You can't escape it. You can't unhear it. I didn't listen. I couldn't. My fingers closed around the record, and with all my strength, I ripped it from the turntable, sending the needle screeching across the vinyl. The song faltered, then stopped altogether. For a moment, there was only silence. The kind of silence that feels like it's swallowing you whole. I felt dizzy, like I was about to fall into the deepest part of my own mind. But then Carl's voice broke through. You think you've won? His words were low, dripping with venom. You're wrong. You've only delayed it. You can't stop what's already been set in motion. I stared at him, my heart racing, blood pounding in my ears. What the hell are you talking about? Carl's eyes flashed, and, for the first time, I saw something dark, something ancient in them. He stepped closer, his smile twisted and knowing. The song is more than music, Rabio. It's a gateway, and it's already opened. You can't close it. Not now. Not ever. I felt it then. A cold, crawling sensation at the back of my neck. It wasn't over. I hadn't stopped anything. I'd only scratched the surface. Carl wasn't the only thread anymore. The song was still there, pulsing beneath the surface of everything. And I knew, in that moment, that Carl was right about one thing. It wasn't going to stop. Not now. Not ever. But I was in a fight. I didn't know how, but I had to. The town, the people I loved, they were worth saving. Even if it meant losing myself in the process. I gripped the broken record tightly, my hands slick with sweat, and stepped closer to Carl. We're not done yet, I said, my voice low but fierce. I'll make sure of that. His smile never wavered. We'll see, he said. We'll see. And then, before I could make another move, everything around us went black. It's quiet now. The kind of quiet that sinks into your bones and makes you question whether the world around you is real. The fog still lingers over the town, stubbornly clinging to the streets like it always has, but it feels different now. Heavier, like it's hiding something. I stand in the middle of Main Street, looking around at the place I used to know. The shops are still there, closed but there. The diner's neon sign flickers weakly, its once bright glow now dimmed, like everything else in this place. People are moving again, but there's a hesitation in the way they walk. They're still unsure, still lost in the aftermath. It's been a week since the record was destroyed, since Carl disappeared, and the world should be going back to normal. But it's not. It can't be. The town's come back to life in a way. People are talking again, starting to piece their lives back together like the broken fragments of a shattered mirror. But I know something's different. I can see it in their eyes. It's like they know something happened, but they can't remember exactly what. They don't even want to remember. I walk past the old church, its steeple jutting into the sky, casting a long shadow over the town square. A few people are sitting on the steps, chatting quietly. Their words are faint, like I'm hearing them through a foggy window. They smile, nod at each other like everything's fine, but their faces don't quite match their eyes. They've all been touched by the song. They may not remember it, but the change is still there, lingering in the back of their minds. I can see it in the way they look at the world now, tentative, uncertain, as if they're waiting for something to snap again. I should be relieved, right? The song's gone. Carl's gone. The radio station's been shut down. I should feel free, but I don't. I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I can still hear the song echoing in the back of my mind, soft and faint, but never gone. It's there. I know it is. I wonder if it's only me. Maybe it's in my head. Maybe I'm the one who's not done with it yet. I pause outside the mechanic shop, looking at the door I've walked through 1,000 times. The window is cracked, the sign hanging crookedly, but it's still my shop. The place where I've spent more hours than I care to count. I don't know why I'm standing here, staring at it. It feels different now, though. Everything does. The door creaks open behind me, and I turn to see Claire, one of the few people I actually trust in this town. Her face is pale, like she hasn't slept in days. I can't blame her. I haven't either. "Radio," she says quietly, like she's not sure if it's safe to speak above a whisper. Her voice has that hollow tone, the one that people get when they've been through something too heavy to carry. "Are you okay?" I look at her, really look at her. I can see it now, too. The same emptiness that's in the others. She's trying to act like she's fine, but the truth is, we're both walking around with pieces of ourselves missing. "I don't know," I reply, my voice sounding strange even in my own ears. "I don't think I will be for a long time." She nods, understanding. "I've been hearing things. Some people are starting to remember things they shouldn't." She lowers her voice, glancing over her shoulder, as if she's afraid someone might be listening. "The song. It's still in their heads." I stare at her for a long time, then glance back at the shop. I don't hear it anymore. Not like before. I don't tell her that I still feel it. That I wake up in the middle of the night with the music playing softly in my mind, just out of reach. Sometimes I think I hear it in the wind, or when I pass by a radio. But it's faint now. Fainter than it was. She takes a deep breath, her eyes distant. "It's not over, radio. It's still here. I can feel it." I don't say anything to that. I don't need to. The truth is, I'm afraid she's right. But I can't let myself believe it. If I do, I'll lose what little I have left. The town might be recovering, but something deep inside me tells me we're only at the beginning. Maybe Carl's gone, but the power he left behind isn't so easy to erase. Claire takes a step back, her shoulders sagging under the weight of something unsaid. She's trying to convince herself as much as she's trying to convince me. Maybe we're the lucky ones, she says, her voice barely above a whisper. Maybe it's only the ones who remember that are still trapped in it. I don't know how to answer that, so I just nod. We both stand there in silence, watching the town around us. People going about their day, going back to normal, or pretending to. I want to believe we're free. I really do. But there's a voice in the back of my mind that keeps whispering that Carl's not done yet, that the song isn't gone. Not really. When I look back at Claire, she's already walking away. She doesn't need to say goodbye. We both know that there's nothing left to say. Not anymore. The wind picks up as I step back inside the shop, the door creaking behind me. The air smells like old oil and gasoline, but underneath it, I swear I can smell something else. Something familiar. Something I thought I'd left behind. A tune. Faint at first, barely noticeable, like the flutter of a distant memory. The song. It's still there, waiting. The town was still. So still, in fact, that it felt like the world had held its breath and forgotten how to exhale. I walked through the streets in the quiet hours of the morning, long after the fog had lifted, but there was something lingering in the air. A heaviness, like the very atmosphere had been corrupted, unable to shake off the memory of what had happened. The silence was suffocating. I had expected peace after the chaos, after the madness that had swept through this place. But what I felt now wasn't peace. It was something colder, something darker, as if the ground beneath my feet still trembled from the weight of what had been. I hadn't heard that song in days, but it didn't matter. It was still there, in the back of my mind, like a shadow I couldn't quite shake. I thought at first it was just my nerves, my exhaustion. But I knew it wasn't just me. I passed by the old diner, its windows cracked, and its doors swinging slightly in the breeze. No one inside, no one anywhere. I hadn't seen many people since the station was shut down, and the ones I did see weren't the same. There were vacant stares, like their minds were somewhere far off, like they couldn't remember the last few weeks. Some looked at me, recognition flickering for a moment before it vanished, like a dream slipping through your fingers. I had come to expect it, the disconnection. People were still broken, even though the song had stopped. Or at least I thought it had. The station was gone. The building stood there like an abandoned relic, lifeless and quiet. Carl was gone too, his absence more unsettling than his presence ever was. I thought I'd won. Thought I put an end to it all when I destroyed the record, when I shut down the madness. But nothing had truly ended, had it? The damage was done. I stopped by the mechanic shop, my shop, but the familiar clang of tools and the smell of motor oil didn't offer the comfort I once took for granted. It felt empty now. The machines were still, the floor clean, but it was like I was walking through a ghost of the place I used to know. I leaned against the counter, staring at the floor, trying to ignore the creeping feeling gnawing at the back of my mind. It was quiet, too quiet. Then I heard it, a soft whisper of a melody, the faintest echo of that damn song. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. I'd heard that tune before, haven't I? It was in my head. No, not in my head. It was coming from somewhere. Coming from the radio. I rushed to the old radio on the counter, the one I had kept as a reminder of the days before everything changed. It had always sat there, a relic from a time when I didn't worry about the world falling apart. I turned the knob, and there was again the song, so faint, so distant, that I thought I might have imagined it at first. But the notes, those twisted, haunting notes, they were real. I could feel them clawing at the edges of my sanity, pulling me in like they always did. But it couldn't be. The station was gone. I knew it. I had seen the building, empty and silent, the equipment abandoned. Carl was gone, and so was his damn song. Yet here it was, whispering, creeping. I turned the volume up, but the song didn't get louder. It stayed just on the edge, like a murmur you could never fully hear. My hand shook as I fiddled with the dial, hoping, praying that I could find the source, something that would explain what was happening. But the dial clicked uselessly, the static growing louder, but never the song. I slammed my fist down on the counter, my breath coming faster now. I could hear it in my head, clearer than before. It was no longer just a tune. It was a voice, soft, indistinct, but unmistakable. Radio. It whispered. Come back. My skin crawled. I ripped the radio off the counter and threw it across the room. The glass shattered, the pieces scattering across the floor like tiny, deadly shards of some forgotten nightmare. I stood there, panting, staring at the wreckage. The room was still silent, save for the soft hum of my own breath. No music, no song, just the crackling silence. But it wasn't silent in my mind. It never was. The song had dug its claws in deep. I couldn't escape it, no matter how hard I tried. It was there, always, waiting to pull me under again. I had tried to destroy it. I thought I'd ended it. But I hadn't. I looked out the window, at the town I had once called home. People walked by, their faces vacant, unaware of the torment that still lingered just beneath the surface. The town had been changed, but so had I. We were all different now. And the song wasn't finished with us yet. I stepped outside, the cool air biting at my skin. I didn't know where I was going or what I was supposed to do. But I knew one thing. The song hadn't just disappeared. It had left its mark. It was still out there, somewhere, waiting for the right moment to come back. And when it did, it would find us all once again. I heard it then, just as I stepped into the street. A note, faint but distinct, rising in the distance. The song was still out there, alive in the quiet corners of my mind, echoing in the air like a warning. And this time, I wasn't sure I could escape. I never had. Story 3. They say the fog rolls and like it has a mind of its own. But in Gallows Reach, it doesn't roll. It waits. I knew the town was close when the GPS went dead. 1 minute, I had a glowing blue arrow on the map, and the next, nothing. Just a blank screen and the growing sense that maybe I wasn't supposed to find this place so easily. I pulled the car to the side of the road, killed the engine, and listened. Silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that feels stretched too thin, like a rubber band about to snap. Even the birds were quiet. Just the soft hiss of the ocean somewhere in the distance, smothered by the fog that had swallowed the world outside my windshield. I cracked the window, and salt-heavy air drifted in, damp cold, almost metallic. It clung to my skin like fingers. Gallows Reach, I said into my recorder, tapping the mic. Population unknown. Reputation. Cursed fishing village turned ghost town. Last seen, Eli Croft, 24, travel blogger and amateur sound engineer. Disappeared October 12th. No body. No witnesses. Just a trail of damp footprints leading to the edge of a cliff. I let the recorder hum for a second, then clicked it off. Eli wasn't the first to vanish near this place. I knew that before I took the assignment. But there was something different about his case, something that felt unfinished. Open-ended. And maybe that's why I couldn't say no. Maybe that's why I told myself this wasn't personal. Even though it was. I started the car again and followed the cracked two-lane road as it curved along the cliffside. The town came into view slowly, like a bruise rising to the surface. Weather-worn buildings with sagging porches, shuttered windows, rusted signs. No lights, no movement, just fog. There was a sign half swallowed by vines at the town's edge. Welcome to Gallows Reach. Founded 1792, pray you stay dry. No joke. That was the actual slogan. The inn was the only building with any sign of life. A flickering orange glow behind faded curtains and the low hum of a generator out back. I parked and slung my bag over my shoulder, stepping into the mist. My boots thudded against the wooden steps as I approached the door. The whole place smelled like mildew and salt. The woman at the front desk didn't say much, just slid a key across the counter without looking up from her crossword. No refunds, she said. I hadn't asked for one. Room 3 was small, stale, and cold, but I wasn't here for comfort. I dropped my bag, set up my mic, and opened my notebook. Pages full of scribbled notes stared back at me. Eli's last known location, a list of locals I planned to interview, strange quotes from old sea shanties he'd recorded before vanishing. And one line circled in red. The tide talks, but not in words. Outside, the fog pressed against the window like it wanted in. I clicked the recorder back on. First impressions, I said. This town doesn't like visitors. It feels like it's holding its breath, waiting. I paused, and I can't shake the feeling I've been here before. But that wasn't possible. I'd never set foot in Gallows Reach. Had I? Something thudded against the window. I jumped, hard in my throat, but when I yanked back the curtain, there was nothing. Just swirling gray mist, thick and empty. The hairs on my arms stood up. Welcome to Gallows Reach, Romerio. You're not here to find a missing man. You're here to remember something you forgot. And the fog? It remembers everything. The first thing I noticed was how quiet it was. Not the kind of quiet you get in the countryside. This wasn't peaceful. It was like the whole town was holding its breath. The wind moved through Gallows Reach like it didn't want to be there. Even the seagulls kept their distance from the shore. I walked down the main road, recorder in my pocket, fingers cold despite the gloves. The buildings looked tired, slouched over, as if they were trying to sink into the ground and disappear. Paint peeled off crooked shutters. Storefronts stood empty, some windows covered in newspapers so old the ink had bled into a soft gray blur. I passed 3 people on my way to the tavern. None of them looked at me. One older man pulled his collar higher as I passed, eyes locked on the ground. Another crossed the street. The third, a woman sweeping her porch, paused just long enough to give me a hard glance before disappearing inside. They knew why I was here. Outsiders weren't common, and those who came asking questions were even less welcome. The tavern was called the Whaler's Rest. The sign creaked above the door, barely clinging to one hinge. Inside, the air was warm and thick with the smell of damp wood and cheap beer. A few men sat in silence at the bar, eyes fixed on their glasses like they were staring into something deep and dangerous. The kind of silence you don't interrupt unless you got a reason. I stepped up to the bar. The bartender was a heavy-set man with a salt and pepper beard and a stare like a storm cloud. He didn't smile when he saw me. "What'll it be?" he asked. I pulled out my recorder and held it up. "I'm not here for a drink. Just questions." His eyes narrowed. "Then you're in the wrong place. I'm looking into the disappearance of Eli Croft. He came through here a few weeks ago. Stayed at the inn up the hill. You remember him." Silence. Someone at the bar coughed. Another man drained his glass and stood, leaving without a word. The bartender didn't move. He was recording ocean sounds. I added. "Went missing near the cliffs." The man stared at me for a long moment. Then he sighed and grabbed a rag, wiping at a clean spot on the bar. "He went where the sea don't give back," he muttered. "What does that mean?" He looked up. "It means you should leave it alone. Let the boy be. Whatever he found out there, it took him. Took him, like it took the others." I leaned in. "Others?" He didn't answer, just walked away, disappearing through a swinging door that led to the back. I was about to follow him when a voice spoke from one of the booths behind me. "You won't get answers from him, or from anyone here." The man was sitting alone, hunched over a coffee that looked untouched. His jacket was too big for him, and his hand shook slightly as he brought the cup to his lips. "You knew Eli?" I asked. He gave a slow nod. "Saw him once, up on the cliffs. He was wearing those big headphones, smiling like he'd just heard a song no one else could hear." "What happened to him?" The man looked at me. His eyes were watery and red, but not from drink. "He started listening too close," he said. "That's the danger, see? Most of us live with the sound of the sea. We ignore it. It's background. But not him. He was listening for something. Did he find it? The man didn't answer right away. He looked toward the window, with a fog pressed against a glass like curious fingers. I think it found him. He stood slowly, left a crumpled dollar on the table, and walked out into the mist without another word. I sat there a while, watching the fog thicken. Outside, the wind carried something faint, maybe the distant cry of a gull. Maybe not. The locals didn't talk. But they knew. And now so did I. Something was out there. Something that listened back. The old Whaling Museum was easy to miss, tucked between two boarded-up buildings like it was trying not to be noticed. The sign out front was crooked, half-eaten by rust and sea salt. It read, Gallows Reach Maritime Archive, though most of the letters had faded into ghostly smudges. The door creaked when I pushed it open. A bell jingled, the sound brittle like old bones. Inside, it was colder than outside, not just from the lack of heat, but the kind of cold that settled into the wood over decades, soaked in by silence and things left unsaid. Dust hung in the air like ash. Glass display cases lined the walls, filled with yellowed maps, rusted harpoons, and photos of stern-faced fishermen who never smiled. I was halfway down the main aisle, looking at a faded painting of a shipwreck, when a voice floated out from the back room. You're not from around here. It wasn't a question. A man stepped out from behind a curtain, dressed in a dark turtleneck and a tweed blazer that made him look like a college professor from some other century. He was tall and lean, with silver in his hair and eyes that didn't blink enough. Something about the way he looked at me made me feel like I was being measured, like he already knew something I hadn't said yet. Romero DeLuca, I said, holding out a hand. Freelance journalist. I'm here about Eli Croft. He didn't shake my hand, just nodded, like he already knew who I was. Dr. Riccardi Thorne. I manage what remains of this place. I glanced around at the dusty relics and cracked glass. Looks like there's not much left. Most people don't care about the past, he said, his voice low and smooth, until it starts repeating itself. He walked past me, gesturing toward a table covered in old books and weathered newspaper clippings. I followed, notebook in one hand, recorder in the other. What do you know about Eli? I asked. Riccardi paused, then pulled out a chair and sat down. He was curious, he said slowly. Too curious, perhaps. Came here asking questions about the caves, the symbols, the songs from the tide. Things most people know better than to ask. Songs from the tide. I frowned. You mean the recordings? Riccardi looked at me then, really looked. His eyes were pale gray, almost silver. They didn't seem to belong to a living man. Have you heard them yet? I hesitated. Thought of the whisper in Eli's tape. Open the mouth. Bits and pieces. Strange noises. Some kind of distortion. Not distortion, he said. Not noise. Voice. The silence that followed felt heavy. You're telling me the ocean is talking? I asked, trying to sound amused. But my voice came out thinner than I wanted. Not the ocean itself, he said. Something within it. Or beneath it. Gallows Reach sits on ancient ground. Older than the town. Older than the sea. Even, in a way. There are places in this world where the veil is thin, Mr. DeLuca. Thin enough to hear through, if you're listening. He tapped the table lightly, then stood and walked over to a tall filing cabinet. After rummaging through it, he returned with a yellowed map. It was hand-drawn, the ink faded but still legible. The coastline was familiar, but twisted, like it had been sketched from memory rather than sight. A section near the cliffs was marked with a single word. Mouth. I traced the word with my finger. What is this? An old whaler's chart, Riccardi said. From the 1800s. They believed there was a cave system beneath the town that led somewhere, deeper. A place they called the Mouth. They said it was alive. I looked up sharply. Alive. He smiled, thin and distant. Not in the way you and I understand life. But it moves. It listens. It remembers. I suddenly felt very aware of the quiet around us. Even the ticking of the museum's old wall clock had stopped. Outside, the wind pushed against the windows like it wanted in. Did Eli find it? I asked. Riccardi didn't answer at first. Then he leaned in, and for the first time, his voice dropped to a whisper. I believe he did. And I believe it showed him something. I waited, but he didn't elaborate. Something like what? Riccardi stood again, brushing imaginary dust from his blazer. That's not for me to say, Mr. DeLuca. Some truths can't be spoken. They have to be experienced. I could feel the air shift around us, like the room had just exhaled. My fingers itched to turn on my recorder again, but some instinct told me not to. Not yet. Riccardi walked me to the door. Be careful where you listen, he said as I stepped out into the fog. Not every voice you hear wants to be heard. Some of them want more than that. Then he closed the door behind me, leaving me alone in the gray afternoon. I looked down at the map in my hand, at that single word inked by a long-dead hand. Mouth. I didn't know it yet, but something had already begun to call me. And I was listening. I couldn't sleep. The wind outside sounded like it was dragging fingernails across the inn's old wooden siding, and something about the way the building creaked made it feel like it was breathing. I laid there, eyes wide open, the ceiling barely visible in the dim, orange glow of the street lamp outside. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the cliffs, jagged, wet, and echoing with Eli's last recording. So I got up. The desk in my room was scattered with notes, photographs, and Eli's gear. I'd gone through most of it already. His journal, the crumpled town map, even a postcard from his girlfriend back in Portland. But there was still one thing I hadn't dug into properly. His last tape. The one marked only with a date, scratched into the label with a dull pen. October 12th. The day before he vanished. I slid the cassette into my portable player, the same one I used for field interviews. The reels clicked into motion. For a while, there was nothing but static and wind. A long, lonely recording of the sea breathing in and out. Then something shifted. A high-pitched tone rang out, barely audible at first, like a whistle through teeth. Then came the low hum. At first I thought it was just background noise, wind over the mic, but the longer I listened, the more it sounded intentional. Rhythmic, like chanting, but soft, buried beneath the surf. I paused the tape, rewound, and played it again. The hum was still there. A pattern. A presence. I leaned in, pressing the headphones tight against my ears. At the 16-minute mark, there was a click, maybe the sound of Eli adjusting the recorder. Then, underneath everything else, came a whisper. Not loud, not sharp, more like a breath with meaning. Open the mouth. I froze. It was clear, unmistakable. A voice. A human voice, not Eli's, and not distorted by wind or tape decay. Calm. Male. Close to the mic. I rewound again, slower this time. Listen harder. The whisper was embedded deep in the recording, like it didn't belong, like it had been waiting there for someone to hear it. Open the mouth. What the hell did that mean? I sat back in my chair, heart kicking in my chest. The wind outside picked up, rattling the windows. My fingers trembled slightly as I opened Eli's journal again, flipping to the back. Most of his entries were about the sound project. He was recording coastal tones, natural ambience, that sort of thing. But near the end, his notes got strange. October 9th. Heard again today. Not the wind. Not a seal. October 10th. Dreamt I was underwater. Something whispered my name. October 11th. He was waiting for me on the rocks. His eyes silver. And then the final entry, just one line, written shakily. October 12th. The tide talks. I shut the journal and stood up. My reflection in the window looked pale and distant. I wasn't afraid. Not exactly. But something had shifted in me. Like I'd stepped a little too close to the edge of something I didn't understand. I had the feeling Eli must have felt. The sense that something was watching. Or listening. I checked the time. 2:43 a.m. There was no way I'd sleep now. I made coffee with the crusty little machine in the corner of the room and kept the tape playing. The whispers didn't come back, but the humming did. That same low sound, pulsing beneath the waves. It almost sounded like it was alive. Or maybe I was just hearing what I wanted to hear. Still, one thing was certain. Eli didn't just disappear. He heard something, and whatever it was still out there, waiting. The cliffs were quieter than usual. I stood at the edge of them just after sunrise, boots sinking slightly into the soft, mossy earth. Below me, the sea stretched out like a dark sheet, rippling slowly under a pale sky. The wind was cold and sharp, slicing through my jacket like it wasn't even there. I had a map tucked in my back pocket. Eli Croft's last scrawled directions, found folded inside his field journal. The ink was smudged, some parts unreadable, but there was one thing I couldn't mistake. Behind the third black pine, where the rock mouth yawns. I found the tree, bent and twisted like it had been fighting the wind its whole life. Behind it, buried beneath overgrowth and half-rotted driftwood, was a hole in the cliffside. Not a natural cave. An entrance. It was maybe 4 feet high, jagged around the edges like it had been carved out by hand or claw. The air leaking from it was cold and damp, thick with the smell of salt, and something else, something metallic and sour, like old blood or rusted tools. I took out my flashlight and clicked it on. The beam cut through the dark, lighting up a narrow tunnel of stone, slick with moisture and carved with strange, looping symbols. I ducked and stepped inside. The light bounced off the walls, catching flecks of sea salt and what looked like mold. The deeper I went, the quieter it became. The sound of the ocean faded until all I could hear was the soft drip of water and the wet scrape of my boots. I tried to keep my breathing steady. I didn't want to admit it, but my hands were shaking. The passage opened into a small chamber. Someone had been there recently. Wax stubs from melted candles littered the floor. Bones, small ones, maybe bird or rat, were arranged in a spiral on the stone. In the middle of the room sat a bundle of soaked cloth and a cracked leather notebook. Eli's. I dropped to my knees and picked it up. Pages were waterlogged, but I flipped through carefully. His handwriting was messy, slanted, rushed. One page was clearer than the others. It read, "The voice comes clearest here. It hums when the tide rises. I don't think it wants me to leave." I read the line again. And again. A low sound vibrated through the stone under my feet. I froze. Not a sound I heard. A sound I felt. Like the earth itself had cleared its throat. My flashlight flickered. Just once. Then I heard it. Not a whisper. Not a voice exactly. It was like a breath taken in reverse, dragged through water and stone. It came from the tunnel ahead, deeper into the cave. My body told me to turn around. Run. But something else, a pressure in my chest, like a hook behind the ribs, kept me moving forward. I crept through a narrow passage, shoulder brushing cold rock. The walls began to change. No longer rough and natural. These were carved, patterned. Symbols repeated again and again, spiraling inward like some ancient language trying to pull me in. My light caught on something ahead. A figure. No, not a figure. Just a shape, hanging from the ceiling like a bundle of rags. I stepped closer, slowly, and saw it was seaweed, dried and twisted into the form of a person. It swayed gently, though there was no wind. I heard water, not dripping, flowing. And then the whisper returned. Closer this time. Romerio. I spun around. No one. Just rock and wet air. My own name, spoken like a sigh, as if the cave itself had a voice. I should have turned back then. I knew that. Every part of me was screaming it. But I followed the sound. The tunnel sloped downward now, leading toward the heart of the cliffs. My flashlight dimmed again, struggling to cut through the thickening air. I caught movement at the edge of the beam, something slipping around a corner just ahead. I called out without thinking. Eli. No answer. Only silence. Then the sound of feet, bare wet, moving away. I chased it. I didn't even realize I was running until the tunnel suddenly opened into a larger cavern. I skidded to a stop. My light swept over the walls. More symbols. Bones. Dozens of them. Arranged like stars in a pattern too complex for me to understand. And at the center, an altar. Flat, stone, stained dark. Seaweed draped across it like a shroud. My mouth went dry. I stepped closer and saw a single item sitting on the stone. A cracked cassette tape, labeled in faded ink. Marco. I didn't remember pulling the recorder out of my coat, but there it was in my hand. My brother's name. On a tape. In this cave. I pressed play. At first, nothing. Then static. Then a voice, low, broken, familiar. Romy, don't follow it. Then silence. My flashlight died. And in the darkness, I heard something move. Not above. Not around. Below. Beneath the stone. Under my feet. The cave was breathing. And I wasn't alone. I stood in front of the old whaling museum, feeling the wind bite through my jacket like it was trying to remind me of something. Something I wasn't ready to remember. The fog was thicker than it had been yesterday, like the town itself was holding its breath. And, as I stared at the worn wooden door, I couldn't help but feel that the air around me was charged, like I was about to open something I shouldn't. The sound of my boots on the gravel was the only noise in the thick silence. I pushed the door open, and it creaked. It's grown a welcome to the shadowed interior. Dr. Riccardi Thorne's study was dim, even with the flickering lights from the overhead lamps. The shelves were crammed with books that looked as though they hadn't been touched in decades, their spines cracked with age, yellowed paper smelling faintly of salt and mildew. "Ah, Romerio," he said, not looking up from his desk. "You've come for more answers, I suppose." I stayed in the doorway for a moment longer, watching him. Riccardi sat with his back to me, bent over something, papers, or maybe a book, I couldn't tell. He was so absorbed in whatever he was reading that he didn't even acknowledge me properly until I stepped in further. "I wasn't expecting to be drawn into another mystery this quickly," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I didn't like how his back was turned to me. It made him feel like something I couldn't quite see, something hidden. Riccardi didn't respond right away. He turned a page in the book, his fingers delicate, as if he were handling something fragile. "You've been asking the wrong questions, Romerio. And perhaps now, you're ready to ask the right ones." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He sighed, almost wistfully, like he was tired of explaining the same thing over and over. "The ocean doesn't just take things. It gives too in its own way. Some people aren't meant to understand it, but others." He turned to face me then, his eyes calm, unblinking. "They belong to it." I took a step back, my pulse quickening. Belong to it. Riccardi smiled, but it wasn't a comforting smile. It was the kind of smile a man wears when he's about to tell you a truth that will change you forever. "Yes. You see, Romerio, Gallows Reach isn't just any town. The sea here, it has memories. It keeps things, people. It remembers their desires, their fears, their choices. And sometimes, it gives them a chance to embrace it, to go deeper." His words dripped like molasses, slow and thick, making my skin crawl. I opened my mouth to say something, but no words came out. Instead, I just stood there listening. "You think Eli Croft was just another traveler who got lost in the cliffs," Riccardi continued, his voice low, almost conspiratorial. "But he wasn't. He found something more, just like your brother did." That hit me like a slap. I wasn't expecting it. I blinked hard, the room suddenly too small, the air too thick. "Marco," I whispered, though I had to fight to get the word out. "You know about Marco?" Riccardi nodded, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Of course I do. He sought the same thing Eli did. Answers. Truth. And just like Eli, he found it." I took a step forward, the sudden urge to grab him by the collar and demand answers tearing through me. "What happened to him?" I said, my voice breaking. "What happened to both of them?" Riccardi's gaze didn't waver. "They found what they were looking for, Romerio. But the truth isn't what you think it is. It's not just knowledge or understanding. It's a kind of sacrifice." He paused, leaning forward slightly, as if sharing a secret. "The sea doesn't take without offering something in return. But the price is steep. Only those willing to give up everything, can truly embrace it." I couldn't breathe. The words rattled in my chest like a cage of rattlesnakes. "What do you mean, everything?" I asked, my voice too thin. "What's the cost?" Riccardi leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of him. "The cost is yourself," he said, the words rolling off his tongue like a confession. "Not your life, not your body, but your sense of self, your identity, the things that make you who you are. You see, the sea doesn't just take you. It makes you part of it. It changes you. And when that happens, Romerio," he smiled again, but this time it was something darker, something twisted. "You're no longer you." I felt my stomach drop, the weight of his words pressing down on my chest like a vice. The room began to spin, the walls feeling like they were closing in. I took a step back, trying to steady myself. "But, Eli," I stammered. I couldn't finish the thought. I didn't want to. The idea of someone willingly giving up their very soul, it was too much, too insane to even consider. Riccardi's eyes gleamed. "Oh, Eli was willing. And your brother was too." He leaned forward again, his voice lowering to a whisper. "The question now, Romerio, is, are you willing?" The air between us grew heavy, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. I couldn't think. I just stood there, frozen, my mind racing with questions I wasn't sure I wanted the answers to. "I think you know what I'm asking," Riccardi said, his voice like silk. "The sea is calling you. It's been calling you ever since you arrived. The question is, Will you answer? I stared at him, the silence stretching between us like a rope, taut and waiting to snap. The weight of his gaze crushed me, and I realized, with sickening clarity, that this wasn't about the missing people anymore. It wasn't about Eli or Marco, or even the town. This was about me, and whether or not I had the courage to face what I had been running from all these years. Finally, I forced myself to speak, though my voice was hoarse. What's the price for the truth? Riccardi smiled, a slow, knowing smile. That's the beauty of it, Romario. There's no price. Not for you. You'll give willingly, and you'll understand what I mean when the time comes. The time? What time? I turned and walked out of the museum, not sure if I was running towards something or away from it. But I knew one thing for sure. The deal had been made, and it was only a matter of time before I would have to face the sea's call. I don't know when it started, but I'd begun to feel watched. Not in the obvious way, where someone stands in front of you and stares, but in a quiet, unsettling sense. It's like I can feel eyes on me, even when there's no one around. I can't explain it, but something in this town has started to seep into my skin, into my bones. It's in the air, the fog that never seems to lift, and the sounds that seem to follow me. I try to tell myself it was just the stress of the investigation, the isolation, the strange atmosphere, but I knew better. This wasn't just in my head. Something was happening. I woke up last night to a sound. Not a loud one, just a tapping, soft against the window. At first, I thought it was the wind, or maybe a branch from one of the dead trees outside scraping against the glass. But then it came again, slow, rhythmic, like someone tapping out a message in Morse code. I lay there, frozen, staring at the window, waiting for it to come again. It didn't. But I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever it was deliberate, like it was waiting for me to react. I thought about getting up and checking, but my limbs felt heavy, like I was moving through molasses. So, I stayed in bed, trying to calm my racing thoughts. The clock on the wall ticked in time with my heart. Its steady beat, so loud in the silence it felt like it was mocking me. And then I heard something else. A voice. Not in the room, but inside my head. It was quiet at first, like a murmur just out of reach. But as I strained to hear, it became clearer, my own voice soft, calm. You know it's real. I sat up so fast my head spun. I grabbed the recorder by my bed, pressing the play button. The static buzzed to life, then silence. Nothing. No voices. I checked the time. 3:42 a.m. Still, I couldn't shake the sensation that something was off. Something had changed. The next morning, I walked down to the cafe where I'd met the lighthouse keeper, hoping for some kind of reassurance, anything that might make sense of the creeping dread that settled over me. But when I walked through the door, the conversation died. The few locals sitting at the counter turned their heads as I entered, like I was an intruder in their space. I didn't belong here. Not anymore. The barista didn't say a word when she handed me my coffee, just gave me a strange look before turning back to the window. I didn't press her for answers, though I wanted to. I wasn't sure what to ask. What could I say? Do you feel it too? That strange weight in the air, like everything's watching. Instead, I left, feeling their eyes follow me as I stepped out into the streets. It was as if they were all waiting for something, but I couldn't figure out what. Maybe they knew something I didn't. Maybe they were just waiting for me to crack. Later that evening, I went back to the inn. The fog was thicker now, rolling in like smoke from some unseen fire. It was so dense I could barely see the streetlights, their glow barely cutting through the haze. I reached for my notebook and started scribbling down my thoughts. But as I wrote, something caught my eye, an old picture frame resting on the nightstand. I don't remember putting it there. The glass was smudged, but I could make out the image, a photograph of me, Marco, and our parents. It was taken years ago, before everything fell apart. I don't know how it got there. I didn't bring it. I didn't even know I had it. But it was there, sitting on the nightstand like it had always belonged. My hands trembled as I picked it up, my pulse quickening. Marco's face stared back at me, frozen in time, his smile just as I remembered it. But something was wrong with his eyes. They weren't his. They were darker, deeper, as if they had been replaced. I blinked and rubbed my eyes, but the image didn't change. The eyes were still wrong. I felt my breath catch in my throat. I wanted to put the photo down, but my hands wouldn't let go. My phone buzzed, pulling me from the haze. It was a message from an unknown number. "I see you." I stood frozen for a long moment, staring at the screen. The words didn't make sense. How did someone know I was here? The air in the room felt thicker now, heavier. I could feel my chest tightening, my breath shallow. I glanced around the room, half expecting someone to be standing in the corner, watching me. But there was no one, just the silence and the stillness, pressing in from every side. I closed my eyes, trying to calm myself. I had to stay focused. But as I opened them again, I noticed something even stranger. The shadows in the room weren't where they should be. They were stretching, pulling toward me, as if they were alive. I stepped back, my feet unsteady, my breath caught in my throat. I backed away slowly, bumping into the chair behind me. I spun around to look at it, but the chair wasn't where I had left it. It was across the room, facing the wall, as if someone had placed it there. I didn't move. I couldn't move. I wasn't alone. I tried to reach for my recorder, but it was gone. I turned, frantic, eyes scanning the room. The door was shut, locked tight. I hadn't heard anyone enter. The room was too quiet. The shadows too long. It wasn't my mind. I knew that now. Something else was in here with me. Something that had been waiting. Something that had always been waiting. And as I heard a soft, almost imperceptible whisper in my ear, my own voice again, I understood. I was no longer alone. I was never alone. I thought I had found everything in Gallows Reach. I had interviewed the locals, traced the missing person's steps, even gone into the caves that twisted beneath the cliffs like some ancient snake. But it wasn't enough. There's always something else, just out of reach, hiding behind half-truths and old, crumbling walls. That afternoon, I wandered into the Whaling Museum again. The air smelled like dust, old salt water, and mildew, like a place that had once been important, but now was forgotten. The walls were lined with brittle maps, rusted tools, and old portraits of men whose names no one could recall. I had been here before, but I wasn't sure I had truly seen it. Riccardi had mentioned the hidden history of Gallows Reach more than once, a history that wasn't in the books. The records are there, he said, but not all records are meant to be found. I didn't know what he meant by that, but I felt it gnawing at me, like an itch I couldn't scratch. The museum's back room was off limits to most visitors. It was a small space, cluttered with boxes, leather-bound books, and the kind of fragile artifacts that belonged in a museum catalog, not piled haphazardly in a dark corner. A half-open door led into this storage room, the light from the hallway casting long shadows on the wooden floorboards. I had walked past it a dozen times before, but today something made me stop. Something was different. My gut told me it wasn't a coincidence. I slipped inside. At first, I thought I had stumbled on more old junk, faded newspapers, frayed maps, and a few rusted nautical instruments that looked like they hadn't been touched in years. But then, buried beneath a pile of musty papers, I saw it. A leather-bound book, its edges frayed and worn. The cover was marked with symbols I didn't recognize, strange lines that curved like waves, then spiraled inward. The ocean had claimed this book long ago. My heart beat a little faster as I reached for it. I ran my fingers over the surface, and the leather was cold to the touch, like it had been left in the dark for far too long. I opened it cautiously. The pages inside were yellowed, the ink faded in places, but the writing was still legible, though the language was odd. Words that seemed to twist around themselves, as if the book itself was alive and shifting. I turned the first few pages slowly, careful not to tear them. The first thing I read sent a chill through me. The Tidebound, Rituals of Submersion. The title was like a punch in the gut. I had heard the name before, the Tidebound. It was whispered among the locals, a group so old they had slipped through history's cracks, their deeds lost to time. But here it was, written in black ink. There were symbols, drawn in the margins, that looked familiar, like the markings I had seen in the caves, on the cliffs. The same spirals, the same circles. My hand trembled slightly as I flipped through the pages. The book detailed rituals, dark rituals that tied the town of Gallows Reach to the sea in ways that felt wrong. The words talked about offering pieces of oneself to the ocean, rituals designed to open the mouth of the deep. I didn't understand half of it, but one thing was clear. These weren't just superstitions. These were practices that had shaped this town, shaping it even now. I skimmed through more pages. Each word seemed to pull me deeper into the mystery, making me forget why I had come here in the first place. There were drawings, too, lines and shapes I couldn't make sense of, but they felt like they were calling to me, pushing me forward, making me need to know more. Then I found something that made my breath catch in my throat. The rebirth of the bound one. The page was marked with a crude, inked drawing of a person, submerged up to their neck in water, eyes closed, hands reaching upward. Below it, the words from the depths, "The truth will rise, and the bound one will call to you." I slammed the book shut, my pulse pounding in my ears. I knew what that meant. I had read enough of this town's history to know that the bound one was no metaphor. It was real, a figure who had once been the centerpiece of the Tidebound's most sacred ritual, a ritual that required someone to enter the sea, willingly, and never return. I felt sick. My thoughts were a whirlwind. Marco. Was this what had happened to him? I quickly shoved the book into my bag, glancing nervously around the room. I had to get out of here. But something stopped me. A voice, soft, barely audible, seemed to hum in the back of my mind. "You can't leave yet. You haven't seen enough." It was the kind of voice you heard in your dreams. Low, almost a whisper. I stood frozen for a moment, heart racing, unable to tell whether it was my own voice or something else. Something waiting beneath the surface. I didn't stay long after that. I knew I had to leave, but I couldn't help glancing back over my shoulder as I exited the room. The museum felt even darker than before. The shadows seemed to stretch longer, deeper, and I swore I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. The sea was calling again, but this time, it wasn't the water that scared me. It was the silence after it, the silence that followed the voice. As I walked out into the fading light of the day, I could almost hear the faintest echo of my brother's name on the wind. I don't remember how long I've been down here. The deeper I go, the less I can tell what's real. The air in the caves is thick, like it's pulling me in. Every step echoes like it's not my own. There's a hum, too, faint but persistent, like the pulse of something underneath the ground. I had told myself I was ready for this. I'd spent years looking for answers, chasing after stories of missing people, of strange disappearances that didn't add up. But nothing in any article or podcast prepared me for this. It's so much colder down here. The walls of the cave close in around me. I can hear my breath, shallow and ragged. I'm used to being alone when I investigate, but this feels different. There's a sense of being watched, even though I haven't seen anyone for what feels like hours. I'm following the faint blue glow that I thought I saw earlier. Maybe it's just my eyes playing tricks on me in the dark, but I swear it's moving, pulsing like a heartbeat, calling me deeper. I think I hear a whisper, a voice I recognize. My brother, Marco. But it's distorted, like he's speaking underwater. The sound of it makes my pulse race. "Marco," I whisper. My voice cracks, echoing too loudly in the silence. No answer, but the glow intensifies. I keep walking. The path narrows as I move forward, jagged rocks jutting from the sides, almost like fingers reaching out to grab me. I can feel the weight of the place pressing down on me, like it's trying to swallow me whole. And then I see it. The mouth. It's not what I expected. I thought I'd find some ancient altar, some ruin covered in moss or bloodstains. But this is different. The cave opens up into a massive, round chamber, and in the center is a stone arch, dark and wet, as though it's breathing. The opening is wide enough for a man to walk through, but it looks unnatural. There's a shimmer around it, like the air itself is alive, like it's not quite solid. I stand frozen for a moment, my heart thumping in my chest, the hum getting louder. That's when I see him. Dr. Riccardi. He's standing by the archway, facing the darkness beyond. His back is to me, but I can feel his eyes on me, as if he knew I'd come. He doesn't move when I step forward, doesn't acknowledge me. "Romario," he says quietly, as if he's been waiting for me all along. The way he says my name sends a chill down my spine. It's almost like he's known me forever. Like we're connected, bound by something I can't understand. "What is this?" I ask, my voice hoarse. "What is this place?" Riccardi turns slowly, a faint smile curling at the edges of his lips. He looks unchanged, still calm, still collected, as if he's not standing in a cave that might swallow me whole. "This is the mouth, Romario. The threshold." I step closer, trying to swallow the bile rising in my throat. The air feels thick, like it's pressing in on me from all sides. The threshold to what? To the truth, he answers, as if it's the most obvious thing in the world. To what lies beneath. I don't know why, but I feel my hand shaking. I grip the flashlight in my hand tighter, even though the light barely seems to cut through the foggy darkness. The sound in my ears, the hum, the whispers, grows louder. The air seems to pulse with it, like the cave itself is alive, breathing. I look at the arch again. It seems like it's waiting for me, like it wants me to step forward into whatever lies beyond. And I can't stop myself from thinking about Marco. Was he pulled into this? Is that what happened to him? Did he come here? And if he did, what did he find? I look back at Riccardi, my mind racing. How do you know all of this? How do you know it's down there? Riccardi steps closer, his voice soft. Because I've seen it. And I've heard it. You have too, Romario. It called to you. Just like it called to Marco. I feel my chest tighten, a panic rising in me. What do you mean? He steps toward the arch, his eyes never leaving mine. It's not just the town that's cursed. It's the sea, the voice. It's been here for centuries, waiting for someone who can hear it. It's what drew your brother here, just like it's calling you now. The hum grows louder, like it's vibrating through my bones. My stomach turns over, and I feel dizzy, like I'm being pulled into something I don't understand. What happens if I go through? I whisper, though I'm already terrified to hear the answer. Riccardi's eyes darken, the smile gone from his face. You'll understand. You'll see the truth behind it all. You'll hear the voice clearly. And once you do, you'll never leave. I don't know why I do it. Maybe it's the way he said it. Maybe it's the way the cave feels alive. The way the air hums like it knows something I don't. But before I can stop myself, I take a step forward. The ground shifts beneath my feet, and the light in my hand flickers. Romario, Riccardi says, his voice steady but urgent now. You can't go back once you step through. You can never return to what you were. But it's too late. My foot steps into the archway, and I feel the air shift around me, like I've just crossed into something else. I feel the weight of it, 1,000 eyes watching, waiting. I don't know what lies ahead, but the hum is all around me now. It's in my head, in my bones, in the air I breathe. And I wonder if I've already crossed the point of no return. In that moment, I realize I may have been drawn here for a reason. Maybe it's not just the town or the voice. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the one who was always meant to hear it. And now, there's no going back. I should have turned back. I think I knew that deep down, but I didn't. Maybe I couldn't. The cave was pulling me in, a quiet hum rising from the walls, as if the rock itself was alive, breathing, waiting. It was like stepping into the throat of the earth, cold and damp, the air heavy with the smell of salt and decay. Every step deeper into the darkness felt like it stretched the moment. Time didn't make sense anymore. My feet moved without my permission. The walls seemed to close in, pressing against my chest, making it harder to breathe. I could hear the faint slap of my boots against the wet stone, but it was muffled by the thick fog that clung to everything, the world blurring at the edges. I should have known. The signs were all there. The markings on the walls, those spirals that looked like nothing, but felt like everything. The whispers in the dark, just beyond my hearing. They'd started earlier, distant murmurs that had made the hairs on my neck prickle. And now, they were louder, closer. Romario, the voice said, soft but clear like it was inside my skull. The voice I knew. My brother. It was impossible. I stopped in my tracks, my heart pounding, so loud in my ears it drowned out everything else. For a second, I thought it was the caves playing tricks, the echo of my mind bleeding out in this place of ancient, forgotten darkness. But then it came again. Romario. I felt my chest tighten. It was Marco's voice. I would have known it anywhere, but how? How could he be here? How could he be alive, after all these years? I took a step forward, then another, and the voice continued to call me. Not from any one place. It was everywhere, around me, inside me. It wasn't just the echo of a lost memory. It was something real, something waiting for me. I had to go to it. I had to see it. There was a point, one fragile moment, where I considered turning back. The rational part of my brain, the part that had survived this entire mess, screamed at me to leave. But that voice, I couldn't ignore it. I wouldn't. The thought of Marco, of knowing what had happened to him, of finding him after all this time, it pulled me deeper, The passage grew narrower, the walls slick with moisture. The path twisted in on itself, turning and winding like the inside of some vast, monstrous beast. I couldn't see more than a few feet ahead, and yet it felt like the darkness was alive, stretching toward me, pulling me in. My flashlight flickered. I cursed under my breath and shook it, but the beam continued to stutter. I pressed forward, my pulse racing in time with the echo of my footsteps. The air thickened, and the scent of salt water grew stronger. The deeper I went, the harder it was to breathe. I could feel the water rising around me, the stone growing colder. The voice called again, but now it wasn't just Marco's voice. It was layered, blended with something older, something more primal. "Come to me," it whispered. "Come closer." I stumbled, nearly falling to my knees as the ground shifted beneath me. The rocks were slick with wetness. I reached out, my hand scraping against the cold stone, my heart thundering in my chest. There was a flash of light ahead, faint, pale, almost too bright for the darkness. I had to reach it. I had to find the source of that light. My body moved without my permission, driven by something inside me, something that felt both terrifying and inevitable. I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't understand why I couldn't stop. The pull was too strong. The tunnel opened up suddenly, wide and vast, and I nearly choked on the thick air. The sound of water, rushing and crashing, filled my ears. A strange low hum vibrated through the ground, through my chest, as though the entire cave was alive, humming a song that was ancient and yet unmistakably familiar. I stepped into the cavern, and there was the altar. The stone, slick and black with age, stood tall at the center of the cavern, rising from the floor like some monstrous, skeletal remains of a forgotten time. There were symbols carved into it, symbols I couldn't understand but could feel gnawing at my mind, urging me to kneel, to worship. And then I saw him. At first, I thought it was a mirage, some trick of the shadows. But as my eyes adjusted, I knew. It was Marco. He stood there, looking at me with that same vacant, distant stare that I'd seen in my nightmares. His eyes, those beautiful, vibrant eyes, were dull now, as though the life had been drained from them. He wasn't alive, not in any way I recognized. I froze. He didn't move, didn't speak. He just looked at me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. My feet were rooted to the ground, my breath shallow. The voice called again, no longer Marco's, but something deeper, something that felt like it had always been here, just waiting for me. "Join us," it whispered. I could feel my own heartbeat in my ears now. The walls seemed to close in, pressing on me from all sides. I didn't know if I could leave. I didn't know if I wanted to leave. I stepped forward, reaching out to Marco, but as my fingers brushed his skin, he disintegrated into dust. The pieces of him scattered into the air, as if he had never been there at all. And then, from the blackness around me, I heard it again. The voice, louder now, more insistent. "Come closer." I felt my feet move, one step after another, toward the altar, towards the voice. I didn't know how I got in here, but somehow, I knew that I couldn't stop. The truth was calling me, and I couldn't resist. The sound of the waves grew louder, the hum vibrating through my body, through my bones. And then, for the first time, I realized I was no longer alone. It's strange, the way time stretches and contracts when you don't know whether you're alive or dead. I never really understood it, the idea of being somewhere else while still being here, but after everything that's happened, after hearing it, feeling it, following it, I think I understand now. I don't know when the last episode of the podcast went live. I didn't upload it, but somehow it appeared. It's as if the sound of my voice isn't mine anymore. Like someone else, something else, decided it was time for the world to hear what I'd learned, what I'd found, what I'd become. I woke up one morning, and the notification was there, waiting for me. Answers from the Abyss. The title made no sense at first. I couldn't remember recording it. I couldn't even remember sitting down in front of my mic. There's a part of me, deep inside, tucked away, that knows I should have felt alarmed. I should have panicked, demanded answers. But the thought barely crossed my mind. Instead, I found myself sitting in front of the screen, staring at that title, almost curious. I felt like I was waiting for something. For someone. Maybe for the voice. Maybe for the answer. I hit play. At first, I thought I was listening to someone else. The voice was familiar, but it wasn't me. It sounded like me, sharp, calculated, calm. But there was a weight to it, something older, deeper. The words slid out too easily, like they weren't mine to speak, like I was just a vessel. I've come to understand, the voice began, and I had to swallow hard because even though I knew it was me speaking, it felt wrong. I've come to understand what the sea really is. Not a body of water, not waves crashing against the shore. No, the sea is memory. It's time. It's the thing that lives inside you, the thing that keeps calling you back. It's not about drowning. It's about remembering. I paused the recording, rubbing my temples. What was this? What was I saying? Was I losing my mind? I played it again. And again. I couldn't stop. The words kept pulling me in. It's not what you think. We never truly leave. Not from the ocean. Not from the things that wait beneath it. They are us. They are all of us. You have to listen closely to the murmurs in the tide. Eli heard it. Marco heard it. You will too. The voice, my voice, sounded almost distant when it said that. Like I was hearing it from underwater or from the other side of the world. I didn't know what to make of it. And I still don't. I should have been scared. Hell, I was scared. But there was something about hearing it, hearing myself like that made something inside me click. I understood. I understood in the way you understand things without ever really learning them. It's like remembering a dream just as it slips away, like seeing a face in a crowd that you know you've seen before but can't place. The next part of the recording was quieter, a soft hum filling the background. It sounded like waves, but not the ocean's waves. No, these were different, almost as if they were speaking to me, through me. Everything you've been looking for, Romario, the voice said, is right here. It's right inside you. You're never going to leave it. Not really. Not if you don't listen. You're mine now. You've always been mine. My throat tightened, and I felt the words crawl up from somewhere deep inside me, some dark place I hadn't wanted to acknowledge. But I couldn't stop them from coming out, from being spoken aloud. The last thing the voice said was the hardest to hear. It came through clearer than the rest, like a command. You'll hear it too, if you listen closely. You'll hear it, just like I did. Just like Marco did. Just like Eli did. I felt my fingers go numb. The recorder slipped from my hand and hit the desk with a soft thud. I didn't move for a long time. I think I was waiting for the echo to fade, waiting for the world to go back to normal. But it didn't. It hasn't. The voice is still here, even now, rattling in the back of my mind. Sometimes I hear it whisper when I least expect it. Other times, it's louder, like a chant that I can't escape. I don't think I'm supposed to leave now. I don't think I ever could. Something's been left behind. Something deep under the sea that's pulling on me. Pulling on us all. I don't know if I'll ever record again. If anyone will ever listen to this. But I'm sure of one thing. It doesn't matter anymore. The voice has already found its way inside. And once it's in, it never leaves. And I think I'll hear it again. I think it's waiting for me to listen. Come closer.